Chapter 959. It was a man wearing a flashy golden robe and a pair of flood dragon boot. He wore a purple gold crown on his head, and his face was fair. However, the ruthlessness in his eyes was frightening. He was Tong Ching, the young master of the aristocratic Tong family in the Immortal City. As a chef who had reached the Immortal Chef realm, he had a high position in the entire Immortal City. No matter where he went, the Heaven Chief's position was always high. Tong Ching played with a jade bead in his hand, indifferently glancing at the three miserable experts kneeling outside the door. "Didn't I ask you to break their limbs and bring them back?" The three experts exchanged looks, their faces filled with helplessness. They had reported everything to Tong Ching and didn't hide the fact that they had been stripped by a puppet. After reporting, they lowered their heads and didn't say anything. "You've really become capable." Three Divine Spirit Realm experts, who have ignited 8 divine flames together with the Thunder Dragon Horse, can't even deal with a puppet, Qin Wentian said. Tong Ching played with the jade bead, sneering. "However, the puppet that came from the lower realm is actually this powerful. The three of you couldn't even withstand it. Looks like it's an Earth Immortal puppet. This young master wants to have a good look at this Earth Immortal puppet." The corners of Tong Cheng's mouth rose, revealing a faint smile. A burst of energy shot out from his palm, crushing the jade bead. Xianyuan Shehui exhaled. The heavy, pitch-black kitchen knife in her hand slammed down, smashing the chopping board into pieces. Hearing the commotion, Xianyuan Xian immediately ran in. He seemed to be worried that something bad had happened to Xianyuan Shehui. After seeing Xianyuan Shehui's appearance, he let out a long sigh. "Big brother, are you okay?" Xianyuan Xian cautiously asked as he looked at Xianyuan Shehui, who was panting and sweating in the distance. Xianyuan Shehui opened his eyes and looked at Xianyuan Xian lovingly. He swung his arms and let out a long breath. "Silly girl, what could happen to your brother?" "That's good. Brother, don't worry. It's very difficult for a special class chef to become a Heaven Chief. Let's take it slow, step by step," Xianyuan Xian said. Xianyuan Shehui looked at his younger sister's well-reasoned manner and instantly narrowed his eyes as he rubbed his chin. "Step by step? Tomorrow we'll go to the Heaven Chief Hall to take the Heaven Chief examination." Xianyuan Xian wanted to say something, but after hearing Xianyuan Shehui's words, the words in his mouth were stuck in his throat. She stared at Xianyuan Shehui and opened her mouth, but no words came out. After a long time, the woman was so excited that she looked like she was about to jump up from the ground. "Brother, do you have confidence in yourself? You broke through?" I didn't break through, but I'm a little confident now." Xianyuan Shehui narrowed her eyes. Her heart was also surging with emotions. He had finally touched the barrier of the Heaven Chief. This time, he must shock the entire Immortal City. After all, the Immortal City hadn't had a new Heaven Chief for a long time. The Heaven Chief Hall was closed. Bufang had also ended his business. At the same time, Bufang also told the diners about the closure of the restaurant and the reason. The diners were very happy. Did owner Bu plan to open a restaurant? If so, they didn't need to be on tenterhooks to eat delicacies on the street. However, owner Bu was very confident. If he wanted to open a restaurant in the Immortal City, he must be certified as a special class chef. Could owner Bu become a special class chef? Although the hot pot and the fragrant spicy blood lobster were excellent dishes, in terms of difficulty, they couldn't be compared to the dishes cooked by a special class chef. Bufang didn't explain anything. In fact, he didn't need to explain anything. He was very confident in his cooking skills. Perhaps, he wanted to become the Heaven Chief. After cleaning up the stall, he brought Yu and Hades' era back to the inn. The Lord Go was still lying on the ground, snoring loudly, as though he could never get enough sleep. Hua, this little girl, was leaning on the Lord Go, hugging the Lord Go's tail and taking a nap. The Black Dragon King was sitting on a chair far away, glancing at Hua from time to time. No matter what, she was his daughter, but in the end, she was relying on a dog. His heart was so stifled that he couldn't breathe. Bufang's return woke Hua up from her nap. Because Bufang's return meant that there would be good food. Yesterday's hot pot made her yearn for more. Today, she didn't know what would be good, and Bufang didn't disappoint. After he came back, he started to cook. Night fell. From the inn's window, steam billowed out, accompanied by the rich aroma of food. Although tomorrow was the special grade chef assessment, Bufang didn't care or worry about it. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Bufang lay on the bed and slept. The room was very quiet. The next day, the sun was high up in the sky. Bufang got up, stretched his body, and cooked egg-fried rice to fill his stomach. After that, he made a plate of sweet and sour ribs for the Lord Go. Then, he packed his things and went out. He had promised Mu Luer that he would go to the Heaven Chief Hall to take the special grade chef assessment. There were many special grade chefs in the Immortal City, but there were more of them than the Heaven Chief. After becoming a special grade chef, one could open a restaurant in the outer ring of the Immortal City. After becoming the Heaven Chief, one could open a restaurant in the inner ring. This was a supreme honor. The Heaven Chief was a realm that many chefs dreamed of. Of course, Bufang didn't think too much about it. Walking on the long street, Bufang walked straight, heading toward the Heaven Chief Hall. The stall opposite the Heaven Chief Hall had been open for a few days. Many people were familiar with Bufang, so they greeted Bufang. Bufang also nodded in response. When he arrived at the entrance of the Heaven Chief Hall, Mu Luer was already waiting there. "Finally, you're here. I've been waiting for you for a long time." Mu Luer smiled at Bufang. She was really curious about Bufang's cooking level, so she was looking forward to Bufang's assessment. He didn't understand why the other party was so excited, but out of courtesy, Bufang still nodded to Mu Luer. "I've been waiting for a long time. Come, I'm really looking forward to your cooking. To be able to think of hot pot and fragrant spicy blood lobster, how good are you?" Mu Luer brought Bufang to the depths of the Heaven Chief Hall. Along the way, many people in the Heaven Chief Hall stared at Bufang with strange gazes. These people recognized Bufang. In the past few days, Bufang had caused an uproar, so how could they not recognize him? Tong Yu had been destroyed by this fellow. This fellow was really a ruthless person. Among them, Bufang felt two frightened gazes. Those two were the two experts from the Heaven Chief Hall who had been stripped naked like Tong Yu. They still had lingering fears about that memory. Following Mu Luer up the spiral staircase, Bufang's footsteps suddenly stopped. That was because a familiar figure was walking toward him. "It's you." Xianyuan Shehui was a little surprised, looking at Bufang. Xianyuan Xian looked at Bufang with a strange gaze. He didn't think that he would meet the two of them here. "Are you here to take the special grade chef test?" Xianyuan Shehui frowned, asking, "It's been a few days. Why haven't you finished the test yet?" Of course, there was a story that couldn't be described. Bufang was too lazy to tell Xianyuan Shehui those stories, so he just nodded. "My big brother is here to take the Heaven Chief test today." Not knowing why, Xianyuan Xian, who was standing beside Xianyuan Shehui, suddenly opened his mouth, his eyes full of pride. As soon as he said that, the eyes of the surrounding people couldn't help but fall on Xianyuan Shehui. "Xiao Xian. Everyone, don't mind me. I'm just here to try. The Heaven Chief is every chef's goal, and I'm also striving for this goal," Xianyuan Shehui explained with a smile. However, since she dared to take the Heaven Chief test, she naturally had some confidence. Everyone looked at Xianyuan Shehui with a little surprise. Creak. The door in the distance opened. Manager Chen walked out. He was in charge of handling things, so he was a little surprised to see so many people. His gaze swept over Bufang, and there was a hint of coldness in it. When he looked at Xianyuan Shehui, his eyes became much gentler. "Shehui, come here. This time, this old man will personally help you." Manager Chen smiled at Xianyuan Shehui. Xianyuan Shihui's face revealed a look of gratitude. With old Chen's help, I feel that my chance is a little higher. Of course, this was just a compliment, but Manager Chen was very happy to hear it. The Heaven Chief test is very difficult. You have to rely on yourself. This old man just wants to witness the birth of a new Heaven Chief. It's been a long time since a new Heaven Chief appeared in Immortal City, Manager Chen said with a smile. Then, Xianyuan Shihui said goodbye to Bufang, then walked toward Manager Chen. Let's go. Xianyuan Shihui's talent is not bad. This time, she has a high chance of becoming the Heaven Chief, Mu Luer said emotionally. Mu Luer sighed with a hint of envy in her eyes. Her cooking talent was not good. Otherwise, she would have risked her life to fight for the position of Heaven Chief. However, she didn't care about Xianyuan Shihui's Heaven Chief test. Right now, she needed to pay attention to Bufang's special grade chef test. After all, she was more curious about Bufang. Pardon me for asking, but if I want to take the Heaven Chief test, can I? Following behind Mu Luer, Bufang asked. Mu Luer was stunned. Then, she smiled and said, "Don't bite off more than you can chew. It's very difficult to become the Heaven Chief. Some people can't even touch the threshold in their entire lives. Of course, if you want to take the Heaven Chief test, you must first become a special grade chef. If you can't even become a special grade chef, it means that you don't have the qualifications to become the Heaven Chief. You don't even have the qualifications to take the Heaven Chief test. Become a special grade chef?" Bufang narrowed his eyes and nodded. Then, he would become a special grade chef first. "We're here. Our test room is here." Finally, the two of them walked in front of a door. Mu Luer took out a jade talisman and pressed it on the door lock. Lines appeared on the door, and with a creaking sound, the door opened. Bufang and Mu Luer stepped in. They were going to take the special grade chef test. At the entrance of the Heaven Chief Hall, a dazzling carriage stopped in front of the carriage. The horse pulling the carriage was the Thunder Dragon horse. However, compared to the Thunder Dragon horse that Bufang had taken to the Heaven and Earth farmland, it was much more spirited. The guard pulled the curtain of the carriage open, and the beaded curtain shook. From within the carriage, a man wearing a flamboyant golden robe walked out. He wore a purple gold crown and a pair of dragon boots. As soon as the man appeared, he was as dazzling as the scorching sun, attracting everyone's attention. Hiss! It's the immortal chef, Lord Tong Cheng. The genius of the Tong family in the Immortal City, Tong Cheng. Why is Lord Tong Cheng here? Finally, I see my legendary idol. It's the Heaven Chief. As soon as the man appeared, the entire crowd clamored. Tong Cheng was playing with a jade bead in his hand, his eyes indifferent. He raised his head. His hair fell down from his forehead, and he used 2 fingers to pinch it and slightly push it aside. That mortal is taking the special grade chef test in the Heaven Chief Hall? Do you think that I can't do anything to you after you become a special grade chef? Really? Too naive. You still have to break your limbs. Even if you become a special grade chef, it will still be the same. Chapter 960. Tong Cheng's appearance was beyond everyone's expectations. An immortal chef appearing in the Heaven Chief Hall would cause a commotion. Many people excitedly looked at Tong Cheng, their eyes gleaming with excitement. Everyone was paying attention to Tong Cheng's movements and his figure. Tong Cheng looked confident and at ease. He was fiddling with a jade bead in his hand, a cold smile hanging on the corner of his mouth. He scanned around. There were many people in the Heaven Chief Hall, especially in the main hall. As soon as he appeared, he became the center of attention. However, Tong Cheng was already used to being the center of attention. Thus, he didn't feel anything special. The reason he came to the Heaven Chief Hall today was because of that mortal. That mortal wanted to take the special grade chef test. If he took the test to become a special grade chef, he would receive the protection of the Heaven Chief Hall. Perhaps that mortal wanted to do that. Since he had offended Tong Cheng, he had no choice but to risk his life to take the special grade chef test. However, it wasn't easy to become a special grade chef. Mortals from the lower realms who came to this world had limited talents and resources. Becoming a special grade chef was harder than reaching the heavens. Tong Ching clasped one hand behind his back, while the other was fiddling with the jade bead. Behind him, there were a few guards with powerful auras, and there was also a figure wrapped in golden splendor. That figure looked similar to the one who had received him at the entrance to the Heaven Chief Hall. Apparently, it was also an Earth Immortal puppet. However, this Earth Immortal puppet was a little dimmer than the one who had received him. Its aura and power were also a little weaker. Someone from the Heaven Chief Hall came to receive Tong Ching. Facing a Heaven Chief, even the Heaven Chief Hall didn't dare to slight him. Immortal Chef Tong Ching, I wonder what brings you here today? An expert from the Heaven Chief Hall respectfully asked Tong Ching. Tong Ching gave that expert a sidelong glance, the corners of his mouth rising slightly. I'm looking for someone, Tong Ching said. Looking for someone? The expert from the Heaven Chief Hall was bewildered. Then, a smile appeared on his face. Tong Ching, is the Heaven Chief here to see Manager Chun? It just so happens that today, Manager Chun is in charge of the assessment of a Heaven Chief, the expert said. Tong Ching, who had been nonchalant, raised his eyebrows. The Heaven Chief's assessment? Someone came to take the Heaven Chief test? Tong Ching was a little surprised. It had been a long time since the Heaven Chief Hall had a new Heaven Chief. Yes. Therefore, everyone is looking forward to today. I wonder if there will be a new Heaven Chief. A glimmer of hope flashed through the expert's eyes. Tong Ching nodded his head. His eyes flickered as he pondered for a bit and said, Take me to the spectator seats for the Heaven Chief assessment. If the candidate can pass, then he will be a brand new Heaven Chief. The Tong family must rope him in as soon as possible. The expert was taken aback for a moment, then he nodded. Tong Ching played with the jade bead as he followed the expert. Although the purpose of his trip was to find Bufang, a mere special grade chef was not worthy of his attention. Compared to a Heaven Chief, the Heaven Chief was more important. If he could rope in a Heaven Chief, Tong Ching's status in the Tong family would rise again. It was easy to kill mortals, but it was hard to find a Heaven Chief. He happened to be here today. If he had come a little later, that person would have passed the assessment and become the Heaven Chief. Then, the Heaven Chief would have been roped in by the other aristocratic families. Hence, under everyone's gazes, Tong Ching followed the expert from the Heaven Chief Hall to the room where Manager Chen was going to test Xianyuan Shihui. Of course, Bufang didn't know that Tong Ching had come. Of course, even if he knew, he wouldn't care. His task today was to take the special grade chef test. Following Mu Luer, he entered the room. It was a big and spacious room, which looked like a small square. In the center of the square was an ancient stove. That stove had many patterns carved on it, which made it look very mysterious. In addition to the stove, there were 3 tables and 3 seats in front of the stove. Those 3 seats were the judges. The dishes cooked by a special grade chef needed to be tasted and evaluated by the 3 judges. If one of the 3 judges wasn't satisfied, it meant that the special grade chef test had failed. As soon as Bufang entered the room, many people in the room turned their heads to look at him. They were all here to take the special grade chef test. Compared to the Heaven Chief, there were many more people here to take the special grade chef test. Those who came to take the test all had some degree of confidence. Every time they failed the test, it would deal a blow to the chef's confidence. If it was too much of a blow, it would be hard for them to improve their cooking skills. Thus, no one would take the test easily. Once they took the test, they would have at least a 90% chance of passing. Similarly, the Heaven Chief test was the same. This was also the reason why the Heaven Chief test had attracted so many people's attention. You should wait for a while. There are 3 more candidates before you. You have to wait for them to finish the test before you can take the test, Mu Luer said to Bufang. Bufang nodded. He wasn't in a hurry. He could also see the standard of the chefs in the Heaven Chief world. What was the standard of the special grade chef test? In the field, a female chef was taking the test. The chef was wearing an exquisite chef robe. The patterns on the sleeves and collar were very exquisite. Moreover, his every movement carried a kind of luxurious aura. As soon as the female chef entered the field, her mental state changed dramatically. Her eyes became very sharp. With a shake of her hand, a long kitchen knife fell into her hand. The kitchen knife spun in her hand and soon the knife light flashed. In front of her, a huge square piece of spirit beast meat was placed. The kitchen knife spun and soon she began to carve on that piece of spirit beast meat. Gouge, pick, cut, stab, her movements were as smooth as floating clouds and flowing water. Moreover, one could see that piece of meat moving fast. Eventually, the female chef patted, scattering all the meat residue on the piece of meat. With a gurgling sound, the piece of meat was carved into a ferocious spirit beast. It was full of spirituality, as though it could come to life at any time. Her knife skills attracted the entire audience's cheers. Many people were amazed by her knife skills. Not only her knife skills, but this woman's understanding of carving was also very profound. After carving the ingredient, the female chef began to prepare the other ingredients. Her mental force diffused. As soon as it was released, the audience burst into an uproar. This was because everyone could see that the color of the simple and mysterious stove was changing. It had turned into a scarlet color. The stove could change color? Even Bu Fong was a little bewildered. Mu Luer wasn't surprised. She looked at Bu Fong and explained, "This stove can change color according to the examinee's mental force. This is also one of the tests. If it can't even change color, how can it be considered a special grade chef?" There are a total of 3 colors on the stove. One is green, one is crimson, and the last one is silver. Different colors represent different levels of mental fluctuations. To a chef, a strong mental force means that the cooking process will be much easier, and the degree of completion will be more perfect. Mu Luer said. After listening to her, Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. This female chef could make the stove emit a scarlet color, which meant that the strength of her mental force was not bad. Bu Fong could sense that woman's cultivation base. After all, Bu Fong's mental force was very strong. If he added the dragon bone kitchen knife spirit and the black turtle constellation walk spirit, his mental force could reach the peak of the divine spirit realm. That woman's cultivation base was roughly equivalent to the strongest demon king. Her mental force might be a little stronger, but it was still a little bit away from the sovereign realm with 9 divine flames. However, with this kind of cultivation base, she should have a high chance of passing the special grade chef test. Her mental force spread for a while. After a long time, the steamer was opened. Hot steam rose up from the ground. In the midst of the steam, there was a wave of fragrance. Many people around exclaimed in surprise. Looking at the dish that was taken out of the steamer, they were a little dazed. In their ears, the roar of a beast seemed to resound. This beast roar seemed to be real. Then, the dish that was taken out of the steamer seemed to emit light, which was vivid and lifelike, as though it had come to life. It was a spirit beast that was placed on a plate. However, after a closer look, that spirit beast still didn't move. That woman took out 3 porcelain plates. The slender kitchen knife in her hand spun, then slashed at the steamed spirit beast meat. In an instant, 3 hooves of the spirit beast were cut off. Placing the hooves on a white porcelain plate, the woman took out seasoning and sauce, pouring it over the hoof. Then, the dish was completed. She brought the dish to the judges' table, letting the 3 judges taste it. This is a kind of realistic cooking method. It's the cooking technique of the Gongshu family in the Immortal City. By carving ingredients that are vivid and lifelike, cooking them, and finally processing them, the dish will have a very good taste. Moreover, it will give the dish a kind of spirit beast soul. Mu Luer said. She seemed to be very clear about this cooking method. Soul? When Bu Fong heard Mu Luer's words, he instantly narrowed his eyes. The soul you're talking about should be condensed and formed by the chef's mental force. It's a kind of remnant mental force hidden in the ingredients, right? Bu Fang said. Mu Luer was a little surprised, looking at Bu Fang. She didn't think that Bu Fang could judge it so easily. That's right. However, this method is unique to the Gongshu family. Ordinary chefs don't know how to do it. If the dish has a soul, eating it will make people's souls throb. It's really a good cooking technique. Bu Fang nodded. Worthy of being the Heaven Chief realm. It's really strange. Bu Fang sighed inwardly. In the square, the three judges began to evaluate the woman's dish. It wasn't beyond anyone's expectations. The woman had successfully captured the three judges' hearts. Her cooking skills made the three judges praise her unceasingly. After passing the special grade chef test, the woman smiled arrogantly. She slightly bowed to the three judges, then turned around and left. Just like that, a special grade chef was born. The test continued, one after another. The three judges were very strict. Some people succeeded, and some failed. As long as there was a mistake, it would become the reason for them to judge the contestant as a failure. According to their understanding, a special grade chef shouldn't make any mistakes during the cooking process. Next, Hidden Dragon Continent Bu Fang. While Bu Fang was deep in thought, one of the judges suddenly opened his mouth. Many people who were watching the cooking test were a little bewildered. Then, they whispered to each other and burst out laughing. Hidden Dragon Continent. Is it a lower realm? A mortal from the lower realm also wants to take the special grade chef test? Where does he get his confidence from? Who gave him the courage? Were mortals nowadays so arrogant? It's not easy to pass the special grade chef test. The surrounding people instantly whispered to each other, their voices full of mockery. Mu Luer frowned. Looking at Bu Fang, she found that his face didn't change at all. With his hands clasped behind his back, he walked toward the square. Facing the others' mockery, Bu Fang was too lazy to use words to refute anything. Sometimes, words were the most useless. The most effective way was to slap people's faces with facts. And what Bu Fang wanted to do now was to pass the special grade chef test and slap people's faces instantly. Chapter 961. It's your turn. The moment she heard Bu Fang's name, Mu Luer turned to look at Bu Fang. She had a different view from the others. Although Bu Fang came from the Hidden Dragon Continent, Bu Fang's behavior these days had changed her opinion. She understood that this little chef from the lower realm wasn't that simple. Bu Fang nodded, clasping his hands as he walked forward. He seemed to have become the focus of the audience. However, it wasn't the kind that made people admire and respect him. Everyone looked at him mockingly, and their faces were filled with ridicule. As people from the Heaven Chief realm, they had their own pride. In front of them, the mortals from the lower realm were just lowly people. What they wanted to do was to see how this mortal would make a fool of himself in this test. They believed that this mortal didn't know how terrifying the special grade chef test was. Perhaps he was just hot-blooded. Or perhaps this mortal thought that his cooking skills weren't bad, so he wanted to test him. However, to be honest, the special grade chef test wasn't just about cooking egg fried rice. If a plate of egg fried rice could pass the test, the Heaven Chief realm would have been flooded with special grade chef. Perhaps everyone could open a restaurant in the Immortal City. Shortly, Bu Fang came to the center of the room, which was as big as a small square. There, a simple and unadorned stove was placed on it. Bu Fang stood in front of the stove, rolling up the sleeves of his vermilion robe. The red and white vermilion robe looked strangely beautiful. In front of the stove were the three judges, 2 men and 1 woman. There were 2 men and 1 woman, all of them rather old, looking like they had experienced the vicissitudes of life. However, their eyes were exceptionally picky. From the previous test, if there was any flaw, the judges would catch it and use it as a breakthrough point, which would eventually lead to the failure of the test. Thus, although the 3 of them looked incomparably old, They were extremely picky and chilling. Oh, it's a little guy from the lower realm. Interesting. It's been a long time since a mortal from the lower realm came to take the test. One of the judges was quite old. His white hair was combed delicately and meticulously. He looked at Bufang with great interest. The other two judges also looked on curiously. The female judge crossed her arms and played with her fingers. Her fingernails were painted bright red. "Little guy, tell me the dish you're going to cook for this test." The woman played with her fingers and asked casually. Before the test, the name of the dish had to be announced to the audience. This was the rule of the test, and all the previous contestants had done so. Bufang was no exception. He didn't want to be special. After thinking for a while, he rubbed his chin and said, "Then, I'll make a portion of Buddha jumps over the wall." Oh, what was Buddha jumps over the wall? The audience and the judges were slightly stunned. And the point is, why do you, a mortal, sound so indifferent? It's as if you just thought of making this dish on the spur of the moment. Thought of it on the spur of the moment? The audience was a little speechless. Every contestant who came to take the test would carefully prepare a dish. Moreover, they had to practice unceasingly so that they wouldn't make any mistakes when cooking this dish. However, this mortal was so casual. He's going to give up on himself. Are the mortals in the lower realms so arrogant now? Or is this guy a clown invited by a monkey? Maybe he's very confident. Buddha jumps over the wall sounds. Forget it. I can't find the right words to explain it. The audience was chattering, whispering to each other. They kept sneering at Bufang. Mu Lure frowned. She sat in the audience area, looking at Bufang, who was standing calmly in front of the stove. She exhaled. She hoped that Bufang wouldn't disappoint her. Buddha jumps over the wall. Honestly, it's an interesting dish. You can start cooking now, the judge said with a smile. Bufang nodded. Buddha jumps over the wall was a dish that Bufang hadn't cooked for a long time. However, it didn't mean that Bufang had completely forgotten about it. The cooking method of this dish was still deeply engraved in Bufang's mind. The first thing to do was to prepare the ingredient. The test didn't give the contestants any ingredient. They had to bring everything by themselves. And the thing that Bufang didn't lack the least was ingredient. To Bufang, it wasn't a problem. A big chunk of demon frog meat emitted spirit energy and essence energy. Papillion claw, minced blood lobster meat, octopus tentacles, and many other ingredients. The level of these ingredients wasn't low. When Bufang placed the ingredients on the stove one by one, the taunts and discussions of the surrounding customers immediately began to disappear. So many ingredients. It seemed that this dish was somewhat different from the others. As everyone knew, the more ingredients there were, the higher the requirements for the chef. A small mistake could easily change the taste of the ingredients, which would affect the taste of the dish. And this time, the ingredients that Bufang had taken out were a little too much, right? Looking at the stove full of ingredients, many people were dumbfounded. There were more than 10 kinds of ingredients, right? At this moment, the eyes of the 3 judges brightened. They became interested. The drowsy judge also opened his eyes, and the judge who was playing with her fingers placed her finger on her red lips, looking at Bufang. The ingredients were prepared. Next, he had to process them. His mind flickered. The dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in Bufang's hand. As soon as the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared, a dragon roar reverberated. The dazzling golden light almost blinded the surrounding people. Swish, swish, swish. Bufang's wrist shook, and the dragon bone kitchen knife spun in his hand. After twirling the knife, it looked like a shooting star falling down. It hit the ingredients one by one. Fast. Too fast. Bufang's knife skill was so fast that it dazzled many people's eyes. The surrounding people took in a breath of cold air. This knife skill isn't bad, one of the judges commented. A knife skill with fast in its name. It's a little similar to the knife skill of the Zhang family in the Immortal City. They're both fast. The judges commented, then continued to watch. The demon frog meat was cut into hexagonal pieces by Bufang. The meat was like pink jade, looking very exquisite. The other ingredients were also cut quickly. The ingredients grown in the heaven and earth farmland were also processed. A series of dazzling knife skills caused the surrounding people to hold their breath. As soon as an expert made his move, they could tell whether it was real or not. This chef from the lower realm seems to have some skills. What's the big deal about this knife skill? In terms of speed, it's not as fast as the knife skill of the aristocratic Zhang family. The main thing is the cooking. More than 10 portions of ingredients. This fellow's mental force will be squeezed dry. Someone said unhappily. Being slapped in the face by a mortal from the lower realm was a blow to their self-esteem. What a mortal had to do was to be laughed at by them. They wanted to see this mortal make a fool of himself. Bufang took out a porcelain jar. It was the necessary porcelain jar to cook the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. It was earthy yellow, and a Buddha with a gentle face was lying on the lid. As soon as this strange thing appeared, it attracted everyone's attention. Of course, Bufang didn't care about the curiosity of the surrounding people. He carefully placed the ingredients into the porcelain jar of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Each ingredient was stacked in a certain order. Finally, he poured the clear heavenly mountain spirit spring water into the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. After pouring half of the soup into the bowl, Bufang closed the lid. His mind flickered, and the black turtle constellation walk appeared. The black turtle constellation walk spun in the air before smashing on the stove. This walk is a little interesting. It seems a little extraordinary, a judge said in surprise. The surrounding people didn't say anything. After pouring some water into the wok and placing the Buddha jumps over the wall soup in the middle, Bufang prepared to simmer it. He took a step back. Bufang opened his mouth. Boom! The dark gold heaven and earth obsidian flame spurted out, drilling into the bottom of the black turtle constellation wok. The surrounding people were silent for a few seconds before bursting into laughter. That scared me to death. I thought that mortal was going to spit out an immortal flame. An immortal flame is so precious. It's already not bad for him to have a low-grade heaven and earth obsidian flame. He's considered outstanding among mortals. Immortal flame? He's just a mortal. How could he control an immortal flame? Finally finding a point to ridicule, the surrounding people started to chatter again. Mu Lua rolled her eyes. These people were really bored to death. In the Heaven Chief realm, the ranking of flames was more strict. It wasn't as vague as the Hidden Dragon continent. The Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame was considered a high-grade flame. It was condensed from the spirit energy of heaven and earth, so its power wasn't ordinary. However, according to the ranking, it was divided into low-grade and high-grade. When a high-grade Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame appeared, the scorching heat would instantly spread several hundred meters around the body, causing the spirit energy of heaven and earth to change. Bufang's Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame was a discerning person. With just a glance, he could tell its level. As for the Immortal Flame, it was also divided into low-grade and high-grade. If one could have an Immortal Flame, it would greatly increase the possibility of becoming a Heaven Chief. Thus, the Immortal Flame was the flame that every chef in the Heaven Chief realm yearned for even in their dreams. Bufang's Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame was just a low-grade one. However, Bufang didn't care. After activating the Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame, Bufang took a step back. His eyes gazed at the black turtle constellation wok. The laughter of the surrounding people gradually stopped. Seeing Bufang's action, they held their breath. They knew that it was time to show Bufang's mental force. He was just a mortal. His mental force should be very weak, right? However, was it really weak? Bufang gently exhaled. A moment later, his mind flickered, and his spirit sea surged like a storm. Rumble! Rumble! A golden dragon roar reverberated. A moment later, a terrifying mental force was released from Bu Fang's body. At this moment, the color of the simple and unadorned stove suddenly changed buzz. The radiance was like a shooting star piercing through the dark haze. It was so bright that it almost blinded people's eyes. The stove's color was dazzling silver. Chapter 962. Silver. Silver? The entire audience was dumbfounded. What was going on with the stove's color? It wasn't green like they had imagined, nor was it scarlet. It was silver. This mortal's mental force was so strong that he could make the stove glow silver? How could it be? This mortal's cultivation base was just at the level of one divine flame. Everyone here was stronger than Bu Fang. However, to be able to make the stove shine silver with a divine spirit realm cultivation that had ignited one divine flame, it was basically impossible. To make the stove glow silver, it meant that Bu Fang's mental force had reached the peak of the divine spirit realm. Moreover, it was extremely condensed. However, a divine spirit realm expert with one divine flame could show the mental force of the peak of the divine spirit realm. This contrast was really strange. The few special grade chefs who had passed the test narrowed their eyes at this moment, looking at Bu Fang. The eyes of the Gongshu family woman were filled with disbelief. One had to know that she had only made the stove glow crimson red. Mu Luer's eyes narrowed. The corners of her mouth rose, revealing a faint smile. Indeed. You didn't let me down. Of course, the judges were also surprised. However, they were just surprised. Although Bu Fang had made the stove glow silver, which surprised them, many geniuses from the aristocratic families could also do that. They had seen it many times, so they weren't that surprised. At this moment, after Bu Fang urged his mental force, his mental energy entered the black turtle constellation walk like strands of silk and began to process the ingredients within. In another room, this room was even more spacious. In the center of the square was a stove, but at this moment, a burly figure was busy working on it. Many people in the surroundings stared at the figure on the stove. Xianyuan Xian clenched his fists. He was so nervous that his palms were sweaty. Heaven Chief. Her brother had persevered for so long to become Heaven Chief, to fulfill his dream. And now, his dream was just one step away from them. They couldn't make any mistakes. Boom. Boundless heaven and earth spiritual energy was mobilized, and in the sky above the square, boundless energy was constantly gathering. The eyes of the surrounding people were incomparably solemn. The Heaven Chief's examination is extremely difficult. The slightest mistake could result in failure. If I want to become an immortal chef, I must condense a wisp of immortal energy in my dishes. It's not that easy to condense immortal energy. It can't be the immortal energy contained in the ingredient. It must be the immortal energy condensed during the cooking process. The surrounding people were discussing, but their voices were very soft, for fear that it would affect Xianyuan Xiaohui's assessment. Outside the door, people kept entering the room. All the aristocratic families received this news. Someone was going to take the Heaven Chief's test. It would be fine if he didn't pass, but if he passed, they would be late and the Heaven Chief would be roped in by other aristocratic families. That would be the end of them. Therefore, this room was already filled with many people from the aristocratic families. The people from the 5 great aristocratic families of the Heaven Chief's test were all present. Tong Cheng was sitting in his seat, leaning against the wall. He was fiddling with the jade bead in his hand, which glowed unceasingly. In the Heaven Chief's test, the stove didn't have many tricks. The color of the stove didn't change. What they needed to focus on was whether they could condense immortal energy in their dishes. Only when they could condense immortal energy in their dishes could they be considered the Heaven Chief. Everyone's eyes fell on Bu Fang. In the square, Xianyuan Xiaohui's cooking was coming to an end. Rumble. Rumble. Thick layers of clouds gathered in the sky, which seemed to carry lightning bolts. The oppressive atmosphere instantly diffused and diffused. It looks like it's almost done. Someone lifted his head and saw the clouds change through the open ceiling. He couldn't help but exclaim. There was only one judge for the Heaven Chief's test, and that was Manager Chen. At this moment, Manager Chen's eyes were glued to Xianyuan Shehui, who was busy on the stove. Just a little bit more. Manager Chen's eyes also revealed a hint of urgency. Xianyuan Shehui was sweating, but her hands didn't stop moving. The veins on her arms bulged as she unceasingly released terrifying energy and mental force. Brother, you can do it! Xianyuan Xian's eyes were filled with anticipation. Eventually, when Xianyuan Xiaohui's mental force created a storm, the lightning that had been condensing for a long time in the sky finally reached its limit. It was about to be released. There was a roar. Lightning struck from the sky. The lightning twisted and turned as though it had turned into a dragon. It's done! The immortal lightning has struck. Half of the dish is done. Let's see if the dish can condense immortal energy. If it can, our immortal city will have another Heaven Chief. Everyone was looking forward to it. The thunderbolts in the sky smashed down. Sizzling sounds echoed unceasingly. Just as the lightning bolt was about to strike Xianyuan Shehui's body, an array lit up in the room, forming a barrier above Xianyuan Shehui's head. The lightning was broken, but it didn't fall. It didn't pose any threat to Xianyuan Shehui. This was the special feature of the Heaven Chief's test room. It could help the examinee resist the lightning punishment after the dish was formed. The lightning dispersed. A wave of fragrance slowly wafted out. Xianyuan Shehui's eyes were bloodshot. His entire body seemed to be drained. He quickly took a step back, gasped for breath, and sat down on the ground. His chef robe was soaked in sweat. This time, he had almost used up all of his mental force and energy. On top of the stove, there was a white porcelain bowl, which contained the dish he had cooked this time. That dish was emitting a brilliant radiance as dense steam slowly rose from the dish. As the fragrance spread out, it aroused many people's appetite. However, Xianyuan Shehui's eyes were glued to the dish. She saw, amidst the rising steam, a wisp of thick white gas floated up, hovering above the dish and circling. That wisp of white gas lingered around the dish, making it more dazzling. Tong Cheng's eyes focused when he saw that wisp of white gas. He exhaled, it's done. The new Heaven Chief of Immortal City is born. Swoosh! An uproar broke out. Then, everyone whispered to each other and sighed endlessly. Manager Chen's heart finally calmed down. He was finally at ease. After waiting for so long, he had finally become the Heaven Chief. Xianyuan Shehui didn't disappoint him. Xianyuan Xian was so happy that she almost jumped up from her seat. Her brother had become the Heaven Chief. He had become the Heaven Chief. That was the real high echelon of Immortal City. His status and identity had been earth-shaking, and he could open a shop in the inner circle of Immortal City, where there were many aristocratic families. Many people had come to watch the Heaven Chief's test. It could be said that today's test had made Xianyuan Shehui's name known throughout the entire Immortal City. Xianyuan Shehui's face was full of smiles. He had succeeded. At this moment, Xianyuan Shehui was so excited that he wanted to scream. She brought the dish to Manager Chen. He picked up his chopsticks, tasted it, and gave some constructive suggestions. Although Xianyuan Shehui had become the Heaven Chief, Manager Chen's suggestions were still useful. Xianyuan Shehui didn't become arrogant just because he had become the Heaven Chief. Instead, he smiled and nodded. In the distance, many experts from the aristocratic families were already eager to give it a try, looking forward to it. He looked at Xianyuan Shehui's figure as if he was looking at a treasure. If they could rope in a Heaven Chief, it would definitely enhance the strength of the aristocratic families. After a round of discussion, they tried to rope in him. Although Xianyuan Shehui was a little dull, Xianyuan Xian was very slick. He helped her brother to rope in the aristocratic families in an orderly manner. He didn't explicitly say which aristocratic family he wanted to join, nor did he explicitly reject any aristocratic family. Hence, the atmosphere was very harmonious. I wonder how Bufang's test is going. Xianyuan Shui rubbed his neck, exhaling a long breath. He still had some expectations for Bufang. It was just a special grade chef's test. It shouldn't be able to stop him. Xiaoxian, let's go and watch Bufang's test. Looking at Xianyuan Xian and the young masters from the aristocratic families, Xianyuan Shehui scratched the back of his head. Brother, you should go first. You're the heaven chief now, so your status isn't ordinary. The young masters from the aristocratic families all want to rope you in. We should give them a reply. I'll stay here to discuss with the young masters. Xianyuan Xian smiled. The young masters from the aristocratic families also smiled and nodded. Then, I'll go alone. Tong Qing felt a headache. He wasn't interested in these things. He was only interested in cooking. In the distance, Tong Qing's eyes flashed and his brows arched. Brother Xianyuan, are you going to watch the special grade chef's test? I'm also going there. Let's go together. Tong Qing smiled. Of course, Xianyuan Shehui wouldn't refuse the young master of the Tong family's request. Then, the two of them walked out of the Heaven Chief's test room. In another room, steam rose from the Black Turtle Constellation Walk, and a thick aroma began to diffuse. It was a simple aroma, but it contained many different flavors. Each of them was marvelous, which made people exclaim in admiration. Different fragrances blended together, creating a unique aroma. It stirred up people's taste buds. However, at this moment, unknowingly in the sky outside the room, thunderbolts slowly condensed. However, no one knew that it was gathering quietly. When the three judges smelled the aroma, they got up from their seats in astonishment. They exchanged looks, seeing the surprise in each other's eyes. This aroma. It smells so good. Every bit of the aroma blends perfectly. It's unbelievable. No matter what, I can't stand it anymore. The three judges exclaimed in admiration. The audience was dumbstruck. When the aroma wafted out, they became silent. This fragrance. It seemed like this mortal had really perfectly fused more than a dozen ingredients together. Were all mortals so awesome now? In the field, Bufang's mental force expanded like waves. The spirit spring water in the Black Turtle Constellation Walk was boiling. All of a sudden, Bufang opened his eyes. He exhaled deeply. In the next moment, the earthen yellow porcelain jar was controlled by Bufang's mental force. It slowly flew out of the Black Turtle Constellation Walk, and scalding hot water flowed down the porcelain jar. The golden light suddenly burst forth and scattered in all directions. The Buddha on the porcelain pot seemed to come to life. That's the Buddha jumps over the wall soup? The Heaven Chief's test didn't have the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. This was the first time they had seen such a dish, so they were a little surprised. The three judges had already stood up. Their eyes were fixed on the porcelain pot. The steam and aroma seeped out of the porcelain pot. It almost intoxicated the audience. Bufang was a little surprised. He raised his head. Rumble! A thunderous sound reverberated in the entire field. In the next instant, everyone in the room was dumbstruck. Mu Luer's jaw dropped. The three judges lost their composure, and the audience was bewildered. Xianyuan Shehui and Tong Qing, who had just arrived at the entrance of the special grade chef test room, were a little bewildered. Were they in the wrong room? How could there be lightning punishment in the special grade chef test? Xianyuan Shehui was bewildered. A moment later, his rough face showed a frightened look. He took in a breath of cold air. No way. Chapter 963. What was that sound just now? In the special grade chef test room, many people were dumbfounded, looking around in bewilderment. The sound that had just echoed was ear-piercing, like a thunderbolt that shook people's souls. It was somewhat similar to the sound of the legendary lightning punishment. But how could there be the sound of the lightning punishment? They were in the special grade chef test room, not the Heaven Chief test room. How could there be the sound of the lightning punishment? Everyone's gaze landed on Bufang, who was standing in the middle of the square. The porcelain jar of Buddha jumps over the wall soup glowed, and the Buddha smiled, emitting a dazzling golden radiance. However, that wasn't the point. The three judges had already stood up from their seat. They cocked their heads to listen, and soon, they heard the sound of the lightning punishment in the sky. Lightning punishment? Is it the lightning punishment from the Heaven Chief test next door? The female judge, whose fingernails were painted red, pressed her fingers on her red lips, her face shocked. No. How could it be so coincidental? Could it be that the Heaven Chief's dish and that mortal's dish would be born at the same time? Perhaps it's possible. Otherwise, how could it be explained? The judges started to argue. However, no matter what, the appearance of the lightning punishment shouldn't be a bad thing. In the audience stands, Mu Luer's mouth was wide open, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. Lightning punishment? The special grade chef test has a lightning punishment? Is it caused by the Heaven Chief test next door? Mu Luer thought. Perhaps this was the only explanation. The Heaven Chief test was taking place next door, so when this happened, the shock in people's hearts faded a little. The audience's shocked faces slowly disappeared. I told you. How could a mortal cook a dish that could trigger the lightning punishment? Only the Heaven Chief can trigger the lightning punishment. If his dish can condense immortal energy, it means he's already the Heaven Chief. Don't be ridiculous. A mortal can't become the Heaven Chief. The audience was discussing. Some were surprised and some were sneering. However, at least they had reached a consensus. That was, the one who triggered the lightning punishment was not Bufang, but the neighboring Heaven Chief. Bufang raised his head slightly and raised his eyebrows. He did not expect to trigger the thunder tribulation. Using better ingredients to cook the Buddha jumps over the wall would indeed improve the quality of the dish. Bufang exhaled softly. He didn't move. Since there was a lightning punishment, he naturally had to endure it to make this dish perfect. As for the expressions and moods of the people around him, he couldn't be bothered. The purpose of his assessment was to obtain the qualification to open a shop. However, he did not understand why the people around him were sneering at him. At this moment, the aroma of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup was enough to make one intoxicated. Could it be that these people weren't attracted by the aroma? Little fellow, this dish of yours should be done, right? What's it called? Buddha jumps over the wall? Hurry up and serve them, the judge said. However, to his surprise, Bufang looked at him indifferently and shook his head. Wait a minute. It's not done yet. I need to prepare my emotions. Prepare his emotions. The people around didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Did a dish need to prepare his emotions? However, right at this moment, the room's door was opened. Squeak. The door of the special grade chef assessment was pushed open. That sound was so obvious that it made the people in the room turn their eyes to the two people who had just stepped into the room. When they saw those two people, they were bewildered. It's Tong Ching, the Heaven Chief. Why is he here? Tong Ching, the Heaven Chief. Who's the one standing next to him? He looks familiar. It's Xianyuan Xiaohui, the one who's taking the Heaven Chief assessment next door. Damn it, I think we've made a mistake. What the F***? The one taking the Heaven Chief assessment, Xianyuan Xiaohui? Why is he here? Has he finished the assessment? Then, what's the matter with the lightning punishment? Oh my God! The audience began to discuss again. The more they discussed, the more they found something unbelievable. Their faces looked as if they had seen a ghost. Since the lightning punishment had sounded, Mu Luer's mouth hadn't closed. She had thought that the lightning punishment was triggered by Xianyuan Xiaohui, but now it didn't seem to be the case. That was because Xianyuan Xiaohui had come to the special grade chef assessment room. It meant The dish that triggered the lightning punishment wasn't cooked by Xianyuan Xiaohui. No one was taking the Heaven Chief assessment anymore. Now, only Bu Fong was cooking. The time and place all made sense. Phew. It's really awesome. Mu Luer took a deep breath, not knowing if she should cry or laugh. She didn't expect that Bu Fong would give her such a big surprise. The stove emitted a silver halo, and the aroma of the dish filled the entire place. Finally, the lightning punishment came. Was Bu Fong taking the special grade chef assessment or the Heaven Chief assessment? Rumble! Boom! Above the vault of heaven, the oppressive thunder rumbled once again. In the Heaven Chief assessment room, many aristocratic children were startled. How could there be the sound of lightning punishment? Wasn't the Heaven Chief assessment over? The lightning punishment was blocked, wasn't it? Wait a minute. That sound seemed to come from the room next door. The aristocratic children were all smart people. After a moment of bewilderment, they hurried to the special grade chef assessment room next door. Xianyuan Xian was still discussing with the aristocratic children, but all of a sudden, they left. This made Xianyuan Xian, who had prepared her speech, a little bewildered. Looking at the anxious faces of the aristocratic children as they left, she could only follow them. In the end, under the astonished eyes of the audience, the special grade chef assessment room was fully occupied. A dish that triggered the lightning punishment appeared in the special grade chef assessment room. Were all the special grade chefs that awesome? Bu Fong's mind moved, and the Buddha jumps over the wall soup hovered in front of him. The radiance of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup surged unceasingly. In the vault of heaven, the oppressive aura became thicker. Not good. This is the special grade chef assessment room. There's no lightning protection array here. That mortal has to resist the lightning punishment. How could a mortal resist the lightning punishment? He's going to be killed by the lightning punishment. The audience suddenly thought of something, and the room suddenly became noisy again. Tong Cheng's eyes narrowed. Finally, he saw Bu Fong, the chef with an earth immortal puppet that Tong Yu had reported to him. He dared to ignore the Tong family. Worthy of being Bu Fong. A special grade chef can trigger the lightning punishment. Xianyuan Xiaohui smiled, praising him. Brother Xianyuan, are you familiar with that chef? Tong Ching frowned, glancing at Tong Ching. Not really. I've seen Bu Fong cook a dish. Xianyuan Xiaohui told him the truth. So it was like that. The corners of Tong Cheng's mouth rose. They were just acquaintances. If he took Bu Fong, he wouldn't offend Xianyuan Xiaohui. Boom. While Tong Ching was pondering, suddenly, a rumbling sound came from the roof. Instantly, the roof exploded. No one had thought that a special grade chef could trigger the lightning punishment. That was why the special grade chef's roof didn't have a lightning protection array, and it was sealed. The roof exploded, and bricks and stones immediately fell from above. As the light shone, the audience looked up and saw the oppressive clouds outside. Lightning bolts were rolling and roaring in the clouds. There was a loud rumble. In the next moment, a light suddenly appeared in the clouds, and a rolling thunder dragon was faintly discernible. Then, with a rumble, the thunder dragon soared into the sky and charged toward Bu Fong. The audience was in an uproar. How could he stop it? How could a divine spirit realm cultivator who had ignited one divine flame resist that lightning dragon? It seemed that the chef was going to be killed by the lightning punishment. The aroma wafted in the air, and the dishes were about to be smashed. What a pity! In the audience, Mu Luer clenched her fists nervously. The corners of Tong Cheng's mouth rose as he watched Bu Fong get struck by the lightning punishment. However, shortly after, everybody was bewildered. Because they found that Bu Fong didn't look surprised or afraid. That indifferent look. Why was that mortal so calm? Of course, Bu Fong had his reasons for being so calm. Lightning punishment. What Bu Fong wasn't afraid of the least was the lightning punishment. His mind flickered. In front of Bu Fong, specks of light appeared in the sky. Soon, the specks of light gathered and formed a mysterious array. The array sparkled. Light shot up into the sky, spinning. Then, a giant, burly figure emerged. Sizzle, lightning arcs move. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes shook. Then, he raised his head, looking at the lightning punishment falling from the sky. A clanging sound echoed. A moment later, the metal wings on Xiao Bai's back spread open, and lightning arcs shot out. Terrifying energy diffused from Xiao Bai's body. Then, Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes twinkled as he dashed toward the Thunder Dragon. The moment Xiao Bai appeared, many people paid attention to him. Tong Cheng was the first one to notice him. After all, he had studied many Earth Immortal puppets. The others also understood. No wonder that mortal was so calm. He had an Earth Immortal puppet to protect him, however. Could an Earth Immortal puppet resist the lightning punishment? The audience was skeptical one more time. More importantly, how could a mortal have an Earth Immortal puppet, a high-end item? Xiao Bai soared up into the sky. His abdomen spun and a black hole emerged. He grabbed a red war god stick with lightning sparkling on it. The war god stick pierced the sky, colliding with the lightning. The Thunder Dragon meandered, coiling around Xiao Bai in just a blink of an eye. Eventually, Xiao Bai turned into a lightning ball. Sizzle, lightning arcs shot up into the sky. Everybody felt regretful. Indeed, the Earth Immortal puppet couldn't resist it. That mortal was about to be struck to death by the lightning. Tong Cheng couldn't help but sneer. Using an Earth Immortal puppet to resist the lightning punishment. That fellow was retarded. An Earth Immortal puppet couldn't resist lightning. As someone who had studied Earth Immortal puppets a lot, he knew the reason. Thus, he was waiting for that mortal's Earth Immortal puppet to explode. Then, that mortal would be struck to death by the lightning. However, after a long time, Bufang moved. Bufang didn't mind Xiao Bai, who was wrapped by the Thunder Dragon in the sky. Instead, he held the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, walking toward the three judges. Shortly, he arrived in front of the three judges. His mind flickered, and 3 blue and white porcelain bowls appeared on the judges' tables. The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched. At the same time, in the sky, a loud explosion echoed. The lightning ball was broken. Tens of thousands of lightning arcs scattered in the sky, and a suction force sucked them in. In front of everybody's incredulous eyes, Xiao Bai swallowed the lightning into his stomach. Down below, Bufang waved his hand and lifted the lid of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. The smiling Buddha was revealed, and instantly, thousands of rays of golden light shot out from the porcelain jar beneath the Buddha. The light was dazzling, and the fragrance assailed everyone's nostrils. Chapter 964. The aroma of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup filled the entire place. Everybody couldn't help but twitch their noses, sniffing the aroma in the air. It was a very unique aroma, as if thousands of different flavors had been blended together. It was like silk, strands of silk. That dazzling radiance shot out from the porcelain jar. Everybody couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. That dish had dazzling light, and its aroma assailed their nostrils. Bufang's mental force burst out, and his spirit sea surged with earth-shaking waves. His mental force rippled, making the Buddha jumps over the wall soup float in the air like a small sun. The eyes of the surrounding people were all attracted. It was a dish that could trigger the lightning punishment. It should be noted that in the Heaven Chief test, if a dish could trigger the lightning punishment, it meant half of the success. And if the dish could condense immortal energy, it meant that the chef had passed the Heaven Chief test. Bufang's dish could trigger the lightning punishment, which meant that Bufang could directly become the Heaven Chief in this test. Oh my God! Thinking about this possibility, the audience took in a breath of cold air, their eyes filled with disbelief. Only this mortal from the lower realm could become the Heaven Chief in the special grade chef test. The three judges couldn't stand it anymore. As they sniffed the aroma in the air, their eyes sparkled. This aroma seems to have perfectly blended all the ingredients. His control of the heat isn't bad. No wonder it could trigger the lightning punishment. More than a dozen ingredients, and with the control of the heat, each flavor blends with each other. Unbelievable! This dish. Perhaps it can really help you become an immortal chef. Are we going to witness the birth of a heaven chief in the special grade chef test? The three judges were shaken. They exchanged looks, seeing the shock and excitement in each other's eyes. Swish! Bufang scooped out ingredients from the porcelain jar. Demon frog meat, papillion dragon claws, and other ingredients were all scooped into the three judges' bowls. Then, he used his will to control the porcelain jar and poured out the golden soup. The three judges regained their composure. They sat in their seats, watching as Bufang scooped out the food from the porcelain jar. The surrounding audience couldn't help but stretch out their neck. Their eyes were filled with curiosity. They wanted to see if there was any immortal chi in the jar. If there was immortal chi, it meant that Bufang was already the heaven chief. A mortal had become the heaven chief. It was something that shocked the entire heaven chief realm. Xianyuan Shihui's eyes were also fixed on the porcelain jar. Her chest was heaving up and down violently, and her fists were tightly clenched. In the distance, the eyes of the disciples from the various clans also shone brightly. If this mortal could also become a heaven chief, he would definitely become a resource that was even more sought after than Xianyuan Shihui. After all, before Xianyuan Shihui became the heaven chief, he had already attached himself to an aristocratic family. If the other aristocratic families wanted to poach him, they would have to spend a lot of resources. However, Bufang was different. They had learned that Bufang was just a mortal who had just come to the heaven chief realm from the lower realm. Perhaps it was due to his innate talent that this mortal had the cooking skills of the heaven chief realm. As a mortal who didn't belong to any aristocratic family, if they could recruit him, the amount of resources they would have to spend would not even be half of what they would have to recruit Xianyuan Shihui. Swoosh! As soon as this thought popped up in their minds, the eyes of the disciples from the aristocratic families became more heated. Tong Qing narrowed his eyes. Different from the other disciples, his eyes were also filled with excitement. However, his excitement wasn't directed at Bufang. Instead, it was directed at the Earth Immortal puppet in the middle of the square, which had almost been ignored by everyone. It was a King Earth Immortal puppet that could swallow lightning punishments. As an Earth Immortal puppet lover, at this moment, Tong Qing felt as though countless claws were scratching his heart. He couldn't wait to catch the Earth Immortal puppet and study it. Why could this Earth Immortal puppet swallow lightning punishments? Lightning punishments carried the power of heaven and earth. Even the heaven chief didn't dare to use his body to resist them. Due to the limitations of the materials used, ordinary Earth Immortal puppets couldn't resist lightning punishments. They would disintegrate under the lightning punishment. Thus, he was so curious about Xiao Bai, who had swallowed lightning punishments in one bite. He stuck out his scarlet tongue, licking his lip. His eyes looked ferocious. He had to have this Earth Immortal puppet. Gasp! An uproar resounded, and this uproar was filled with regret and sighs. Many people in the audience felt dispirited. The three judges looked at the dish in the blue and white porcelain bowl, their eyes complicated. No immortal energy. Although the dish bloomed with dazzling gold light, it didn't have any immortal energy. Without immortal energy, it meant that this dish couldn't make Bufang the heaven chief. What a pity! The three judges let out a long sigh. They all felt that this was a little boring. The audience sighed again and again, feeling regretful. After feeling regretful, some of them looked at Bufang with disdain. A mortal is just a mortal. He thought he could counterattack and become the heaven chief. Turns out he just farts. What a pity. If he could become the heaven chief, this mortal would become the focus of the heaven chief's realm. Becoming a special grade chef isn't bad. No matter what, he's just a mortal from the lower realm. The audience discussed among themselves and revealed a look of emotion. The bright light in the eyes of the aristocratic family's juniors vanished. What remained was a faint disdain. That's right, disdain. As the aristocratic family's juniors, they were that realistic. If Bufang became the heaven chief, they would welcome him with smiles. However, Bufang didn't become the heaven chief, and his dishes didn't have immortal energy. Thus, he could only become a special grade chef. To the aristocratic families, a special grade chef was nothing. Let alone a mortal's special grade chef. There was no need to rope him in. Xianyuan Shehui let out a long sigh. His eyes were filled with a complicated look, but there was also a hint of rejoicing. It seemed she felt lucky that Bufang didn't become the heaven chief. Although he was devoted to cooking, he wasn't stupid. He knew very well that if Bufang became the heaven chief, his value would be greatly reduced, and the resources he could get would be reduced. That wasn't what he wanted to see. Now that Bufang didn't become the heaven chief, he felt a little lucky. Xianyuan Xian stood with the other aristocratic family's juniors, squinting at Bufang. Just now, she was almost scared to death. Mu Luo rubbed her head, sighing regretfully. Still lacking a little. Although it was a pleasant surprise, it was still lacking a little. Heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup. You're welcome to taste it, Bufang said calmly. He took a step back, indifferently looking at the three judges. The three judges glanced at Bufang, then calmly nodded. Since he didn't become the heaven chief, the three judges were disappointed, so their attitude toward Bufang wasn't good. The female judge, whose nails were painted bright red, grabbed the porcelain spoon. She raised her little finger, which made her look somewhat elegant. She scooped up a spoonful of golden soup. The soup was clear, and it didn't have any grease rings on it. Sizzle, her red lips curled up, and a suction force appeared. The golden soup on the porcelain spoon was sucked into her mouth. Oh! In the next moment, the eyebrows of the judge twitched and the expression on her face instantly changed. After drinking a mouthful of the soup, a sleek redness surged on her fair and pretty face. Faint steam gushed out from her mouth and nose. This smell! So fragrant! So rich! The female judge's body slightly tightened. She clamped her legs together, and her eyes revealed a look of disbelief. This soup seemed to have only one taste, but if one carefully tasted it, they would feel that there were thousands of flavors within that one taste. This was a very inconceivable feeling. When the other two judges saw the female judge's strange expression, their eyes brightened. They also started to taste the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. The audience watched as the three judges drank a mouthful of soup. Their porcelain spoons couldn't stop moving, and they continuously scooped out the soup and poured it into their mouth. After drinking the soup, they used their chopsticks to pick up the ingredients in their bowls. In the bowl of the red-painted female judge was a papillion dragon claw. The papillion dragon claw was very big, but after being cooked, it became smaller and smaller, and the meat became smoother and smoother. The female judge licked the papillion dragon claw, and the soup on the dragon claw flowed through her tongue and into her mouth. Her entire body shivered, so fragrant. The female judge hummed through her nose. Then, she began to stuff the dragon claw into her mouth. The two judges next to her gawked and dropped their jaws. They swallowed their saliva, and their Adam's apple moved. The surrounding audience was also excited to see this. Eating a dish could be done like this? Crunch! Crunch! All of a sudden, the female's eyes shot out bright light. Then, she fiercely closed her mouth, and the dragon claw was instantly bitten off. All the audience members who were paying attention to the female judge felt their hearts clench, and their bodies shivered. The other two judges also began to taste the dish. The demon frog meat was smooth and tender, and the octopus meat was also very springy. There were those that flew in the sky, ran on the ground, and swam in the water. They had to admit that this dish was really shocking. It was a pity that it couldn't make Bufang the heaven chief. The three judges finished their dishes, wiping their mouth. Although the Buddha jumps over the wall soup didn't make Bufang the heaven chief, at least, it wouldn't be a problem for him to become a special grade chef. Thus, the three judges announced that Bufang would become a special grade chef. This meant that Bufang had obtained the qualification to open a restaurant in Immortal City. Bufang narrowed his eyes, feeling a little excited. Now that he had obtained the qualification to open a restaurant, he was one step closer to completing the temporary task. In the room, the audience had begun to watch Bufang leave. He was just a special grade chef, so he couldn't attract their attention. If it weren't for the lightning punishment, they wouldn't have paid attention to Bufang. Xianyuan Shehui sighed. What a pity. Then, he turned to look at Tong Qing, who was sitting next to him. However, he was slightly bewildered. Young Master Tong Qing, you? Xianyuan Shehui furrowed her brows. Tong Qing turned to look at Xianyuan Shehui, a gentle smile on his face. Brother Xianyuan, I have a score to settle with that mortal. When I'm back, I'll have a good chat with Xianyuan Shehui. Tong Qing played with the jade bead in his hand as he said with a smile. Xianyuan Shehui's eyes shrank. With his sharp senses, he could sense a murderous aura in Tong Qing's eyes. Tong Qing turned around, and the smile on his face disappeared instantly. Then, his face became indifferent. When he looked at Xiao Bai, there was a look of excitement on his face. He exerted some force in his hand and the jade bead shattered. Tong Qing slowly walked toward Bufang. Bufang had finished his special grade chef test and achieved his goal. He didn't want to stay here any longer, so he turned around to leave. Now that he had obtained the qualification to open a restaurant, Bufang couldn't wait to open another branch. However, as soon as he turned around, a cold voice came from behind him. Mortal! Stop right there. Leave your earth immortal puppet. I suspect that your earth immortal puppet is the one I lost in the lower realm. Chapter 965. Your earth immortal puppet looks like the one I lost in the lower realm. As soon as Tong Qing said that, the noisy room quieted down. Those who were about to walk out of the room immediately pricked up their ears and looked in Bufang's direction. Their faces were filled with bewilderment and uncertainty. Xianyuan Shehui, who was standing not far from them, heard Tong Qing's voice. His face changed. At this moment, many people's attention fell on the earth immortal puppet. Yet, that earth immortal puppet doesn't look ordinary. Of course it's not ordinary. If it could resist the lightning punishment, how could it be ordinary? You're wrong. It didn't resist it. It swallowed the lightning punishment. The audience stopped in their tracks and stood where they were, whispering to each other as they discussed among themselves. The more they discussed, the more they found the earth immortal puppet incredible. Previously, their attention was attracted by the aroma of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, so they didn't pay attention to Xiao Bai's mysteriousness. However, they couldn't deny that an earth immortal puppet could resist the lightning punishment unscathed. It was enough to show how extraordinary it was. Young Master Tong Qing, Bufang, Xianyuan Shehui furrowed his brows. Although he and Bufang were just acquaintances, Tong Qing, who wanted to steal Bufang's earth immortal puppet, was bullying. Thus, he wanted to say something. However, Brother Xianyuan, don't say anything. I hate it when people interfere with my business. Tong Qing turned his head and looked at Xianyuan Shehui. He extended a finger to cover his mouth as he spoke in a soft voice. Xianyuan Shehui froze. Thinking about Tong Qing's status, Xianyuan Shehui could only sigh. Although he had become the Heaven Chief, Tong Qing was also the Heaven Chief. Moreover, he was a descendant of an aristocratic family, so his status was much higher than his. Although he had some authority, he couldn't influence Tong Qing. Mu Luer wanted to come and congratulate Bufang, but she didn't expect that Tong Qing would show up. Tong Qing was a member of the Tong family. Did Tong Yu report something to him? That was possible. Thinking of Tong Yu's sharp and unkind face, Mu Luer suddenly felt that Bufang was in trouble. In the Immortal City, everybody knew that Tong Qing liked to play with Earth Immortal Puppet. Now that Bufang had mentioned an earth immortal puppet that could swallow lightning punishments, how could it not attract Tong Cheng's attention? Bufang stood where he was, while Xiao Bai stood beside Bufang. Its mechanical eyes flickered continuously, and there were electric arcs jumping on them. Tong Cheng smirked, coldly looking at Bufang. Bufang was expressionless. After hearing Tong Cheng's words, they slowly turned their heads and looked at each other. "What did you say?" Bufang asked, his face still emotionless. "I said, your earth immortal puppet is mine." Tong Cheng smirked, raising a finger to point at Xiao Bai, who was standing beside Bufang. Bufang rolled his eyes. He didn't want to pay attention to this fellow. He turned around, his vermilion robe fluttering in the wind. "Xiao Bai, let's go." Xiao Bai started walking, following Bufang. Boom, boom, boom. The man and the puppet headed straight for the door. "Did this young master allow you to leave?" Tong Cheng gently exhaled as he asked. He had heard that this mortal was cold and arrogant, but he didn't expect that he would still be this arrogant in front of him. This mortal was really stupid. Bufang didn't seem to hear Tong Cheng's words as he continued walking. "Did I say you could leave?" Boom. Tong Cheng's eyes widened. In the next moment, a terrifying aura instantly burst forth from his body. The entire space seemed to have turned into a quagmire at this moment. Everyone in the room felt their breathing become sluggish as fear surfaced on their faces. Tong Cheng of the Tong family was an immortal chef, an existence at one-star true immortal realm. When a true immortal realm expert was enraged, everybody was frightened. It was a formidable pressure that pressed on their chests like a giant rock, making it hard for them to breathe. Xianyuan Shehui widened his eyes. Blue veins bulged on his body as he tried to resist the pressure in the air. Although he had become an immortal chef, his true energy cultivation base hadn't reached the true immortal realm. In fact, the people living in the outer ring of the immortal city were all below the true immortal realm. The Heaven Chief, the aristocratic families, and the true immortal realm experts all lived in the inner ring. The gap between him and Tong Cheng was still big. Xianyuan Xian was petrified. He held his breath, not daring to breathe loudly. The other aristocratic family's youngsters squinted, looking at Tong Cheng in fright. He was a genius of the Tong family's younger generation, an immortal chef, and a one-star true immortal realm expert. His halo was dazzling. Tong Cheng was the hope of the Tong family. Feeling the pressure in the air, the other aristocratic families' youngsters sighed. Perhaps only the geniuses of their families could compete with Tong Cheng. For example, the Gongshu family's Gongshu Shi and the Zhang family's Zhang Yang. They were the geniuses of their families, and they were as dazzling as stars. The atmosphere suddenly became chilly. Tong Cheng's eyes were cold. An icy aura emitted from his body, pressing down on Bufang. He was just a divine spirit realm expert with one divine flame, but he could use his pressure to make Bufang kneel. However, he soon realized that he was wrong. This was because Bufang did not care about his pressure at all. Tong Cheng's pressure at the true immortal realm didn't make Bufang kneel. Since Bufang had the system, he was immune to any kind of pressure. Slowly turning around, Bufang looked calm and collected. His calmness and composure made many people suck in a breath of cold air. This mortal was a little mysterious. Mu Luer's body was shivering. She looked at Tong Cheng and Bufang in disbelief. "Do you know what this lump of iron is called? How can you say it's your earth immortal puppet?" Bufang asked, his face expressionless. "I said it's mine, so it's mine." Tong Cheng's hair fluttered as he clasped his hands behind his back, walking toward Bufang. With every step he took, the onlookers felt an incomparable pressure on their mind. It was as if a hand had grabbed them. "Mortal, you're from the Hidden Dragon continent, right?" "My earth immortal puppet was lost in the Hidden Dragon continent. That's why the earth immortal puppet next to you belongs to me," Tong Cheng said coldly. Tong Cheng's words surprised Bufang. Lost in the hidden dragon continent. Bufang arched his brows. Was Tong Cheng's earth immortal puppet the golden figure that guarded the entrance to the Heaven Chief realm? When the Lord Go smashed that figure with his paw, he had said that it was an earth immortal puppet. After the golden figure was smashed, a crystal fell out, which Xiao Bai swallowed. Did that earth immortal puppet belong to Tong Cheng? At this moment, Tong Cheng's eyes fell on Xiao Bai. His eyes were filled with excitement and greed. Tong Cheng's desire for the earth immortal puppet made him unable to restrain his greed. If Bufang had become the Heaven Chief realm, he would have been a little afraid. However, Bufang was just a special grade chef, so he didn't have to be afraid. He was just a special grade chef. If he was killed, so be it. Would the Heaven Chief Hall of the City Lord's mansion confront the Tong family for a special grade chef? Xiao Bai doesn't belong to you. Bufang thought for a long time, then said seriously. Facing Tong Cheng's overbearing attitude, Bufang chose to ignore him. Tong Cheng squinted. A moment later, he flicked his finger. A wisp of true energy instantly turned into an arrow, tearing the void and shooting toward Bufang's head. Even though they were in the Heaven Chief Hall, Tong Cheng didn't hesitate to attack. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes twinkled. With a buzzing sound, the war god's stick shot out, hitting the arrow made of true energy. There was a loud explosion. Whitey's body trembled for a while. It can actually stop my finger. The more I look at this earth immortal puppet, the more satisfied I am. Tong Cheng grinned. He became more excited. Xiao Bai's body seemed to be full of magic, like a black hole that attracted his mind. True immortal realm, Bufang furrowed his brows. Was the true immortal realm above the divine spirit realm? Hades' era should be in existence at the true immortal realm. As for the Lord Go, Bufang couldn't figure it out. Buzz, a buzzing sound echoed. Tong Cheng's figure disappeared from his spot. A moment later, he reappeared right next to Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes twinkled. Lightning shot out as he struck his stick at Tong Cheng. Tens of thousands of stick shadows scattered. Lightning arcs danced as they turned into a single stick. However, this incomparably powerful rod was blocked by Tong Cheng. Tong Cheng's palm seemed to have turned into a piece of jade, which looked like glass. The war god's stick smashed down, but it was easily caught. Boom! Tong Cheng raised his hand, and an invisible force bombarded Xiao Bai's body. Xiao Bai was sent flying. He directly smashed into the wall, creating a deep pit in it. Weak, but you can absorb lightning. I'm very interested in this effect. Tong Cheng smiled faintly. Then, Tong Cheng turned to Bufang. Now, you're the only one left. Bufang was expressionless, but there was a hint of seriousness in his eyes. Give this earth immortal puppet to me, and I'll spare you the pain. If you don't want it, my Tong family has many tools to torture people. Tong Cheng said. The aristocratic families were indeed domineering. Tong Cheng's words made the audience take a deep breath. They felt a little scared. Actually, you had a chance. If you could become the Heaven Chief, I wouldn't have attacked you. Unfortunately, you disappointed me. You didn't condense immortal energy, so you couldn't become the Heaven Chief. Become the Heaven Chief? Bufang furrowed his brows. Tong Cheng, this is the Heaven Chief Hall. You're not allowed to act presumptuously here. All of a sudden, Tong Cheng was bewildered. From a distance, Mu Luer strode over. City Lord Mu's daughter? Why is she meddling in other people's business? Tong Cheng furrowed his brows in doubt. Young Master Tong, young Pavilion Master Mu is right. The Heaven Chief Hall won't allow you to act presumptuously, an aged voice rang out. Manager Chen's aged face gradually appeared as he looked at Tong Cheng in the distance. You want to offend me for a mortal? You should know that offending me is the same as offending the Tong family. Can you afford this price? Tong Cheng sneered. Things were getting more interesting when the onlookers saw Mu Luer and Manager Chen stand up for Bufang. They had a playful look in their eyes. Did the Tong family want to start a war with the city lord because of a mortal? However, just as the atmosphere was about to turn hostile, Bufang coughed, as though he was about to say something. Mu Luer turned to look at Bufang, her face solemn. You should leave first. Since you've become a special grade chef in the Heaven Chief Hall, our Heaven Chief Hall will ensure your safety. He's just a special grade chef. Mu Luer, do you really want to go against me? Tong Cheng's aura became more oppressive. Even the air seemed to tremble under his pressure. Manager Chen's wizened face didn't change. His white hair fluttered, and the pressure of a true immortal realm expert expanded from his body. It seemed like he had made his stand clear. The atmosphere was so tense that no one dared to breathe too loudly. Bufang took out the black turtle constellation wok, smashing it on the ground. Boom! With a loud bang, the heavy black turtle constellation wok seemed to have sunk into the ground, instantly attracting the attention of the audience. Tong Cheng, Mu Luer, and Manager Chen couldn't help but turn to look at him. Before I leave, I want to ask you a question. After becoming a special grade chef, how long will it take for me to take the Heaven Chief test? Can I take the test now? Bufang asked, his face emotionless. Take the Heaven Chief test? Everybody was bewildered. A moment later, they looked at Bufang, their eyes shrank. Bufang held the black turtle constellation wok in one hand. His aura rose rapidly under people's perception. 1 divine flame, 2 divine flames, 3 divine flames, in just a breath. He had turned from a divine spirit realm expert with 1 divine flame to a divine spirit realm expert with 9 divine flames. At the same time, the system's serious voice rang out in his head. Chapter 966. Congratulations to the host for completing the temporary task. Open a branch restaurant in the Immortal City. You will receive the task reward, cutting immortal style. Congratulations to the host for completing the turnover task. You will be promoted. You will receive the task reward, the system's serious voice echoed in Bufang's head. This voice made Bufang a little bewildered. Then, the corners of his mouth rose. He had broken through. He hadn't thought that he would break through at this moment. After more than 3 years, he had finally broken through. It was the right time for him to break through. Now that he had broken through, Bufang's aura changed. His true energy fluctuated, rising unceasingly. A sparkling, jade-like divine altar emerged above his head. Flames filled the air. 1 divine flame, 2 divine flames, 3 divine flames, 9 divine flames danced on the divine altar. At this moment, Bufang's aura reached its peak, and the pressure on his body was naturally released. The vermilion robe fluttered, and an earth-yellow halo covered Bufang's body. When this scene entered the eyes of the crowd, it caused them all to be shocked. Did that mortal take drugs or something? How could his cultivation base increase so fast? The advancement of cultivation base had always been done step by step. With such a fast advancement, it was easy for him to enter bedevilment. Could it be that this mortal had used some kind of secret technique? That's right. That must be it. However, since it could boost someone from the Divine Spirit Realm to the peak of the Divine Spirit Realm, it meant that this secret technique wasn't simple. However, the onlookers were still a little skeptical. They didn't understand why Bufang had erupted his cultivation base at this moment. Even if he used a secret technique, there was still a big gap between his and Tong Cheng's cultivation base. The true immortal realm was 1 level higher than the divine spirit realm. Even if Bufang had reached the peak of the divine spirit realm, Tong Cheng could still kill Bufang in an instant. It was the suppression and gap between their realms. A gap that couldn't be bridged. Swoosh, his cultivation base gradually calmed down. As the divine flames vanished, Bufang calmly lifted his head, looking around. The onlookers were dumbstruck, as though they were shocked by his performance. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. What was there to be shocked about? It was just a daily breakthrough. But that wasn't the point. I'm asking you a question, Bu Fang said. His words immediately brought everyone back to their senses. The surrounding people immediately looked at Bu Fang as if they were looking at a lunatic. Heaven Chief Assessment? The corners of Tong Cheng's mouth twitched disdainfully. Bu Fang could summon lightning, but he hadn't condensed immortal qi yet. This meant that Bu Fang's accumulation was not enough. It was impossible for him to become the Heaven Chief in a short time. This was the consensus of the Heaven Chief realm. Xianyuan Shehui, for example, had only managed to break through and become the Heaven Chief after several years of accumulation and great talent. Bu Fang had not been able to become the Heaven Chief before, but in the blink of an eye, how could he become the Heaven Chief? As the young pavilion master of the Heaven Chief Hall, of course, Mu Luer knew the reason. Manager Chen's cultivation base was really strong. He was also at the true immortal realm, which was a little bit stronger than Tong Cheng. At this moment, Manager Chen's face was solemn as he indifferently looked at Bu Fang. Young man, don't bite off more than you can chew. I've seen your performance. I admit that I misjudged you. However, it's not easy to become the Heaven Chief. You've failed once. If you want to succeed again, you will need several years of accumulation. Mu Luer nodded and said, Bu Fang, don't worry. As long as the Heaven Chief Hall is here, no one can touch you, not even the Tong family. You're really talented. In the future, you can become the Heaven Chief. However, you shouldn't ruin your future. The eyes of the surrounding audience also sparkled. Today's events were full of twists and turns, which made them feel good. First, Bu Fang had shown his excellent talent. He had triggered the lightning punishment in the special grade chef test. They had thought that he could become the Heaven Chief with his special grade chef cultivation base. However, his dishes hadn't condensed immortal energy, which had given them a big shock. Then, Tong Cheng's appearance and the Heaven Chief Hall's sponsor had given them a feast for their eyes. However, at the last moment, Bu Fang's cultivation base had skyrocketed, and he said that he wanted to take the Heaven Chief test. Why didn't he go to heaven? He had just failed the test, but he still wanted to take the Heaven Chief test. How could he become the Heaven Chief by forcefully increasing his cultivation base? Bu Fang held the Black Turtle Constellation Walk with one hand, feeling a little speechless. I just broke through. I'll take the Heaven Chief test. That way, I won't have to take the test later. Bu Fang said faintly, his voice calm. However, when the others heard it, they felt that he deserved a beating. Then, he took the Immortal Chef test. Others couldn't even touch the threshold of the Heaven Chief test in their whole lives, but he said he could take the Heaven Chief test. Did he want to attract hatred? Did he want to be stabbed 1,000 times? I'm serious. Bu Fang was afraid that Mu Luer would think he was joking, so he reminded her again. Mu Luer's mouth twitched. You don't need to be so serious. From a distance, Xianyuan Shehui was also speechless. As the chef who had just taken the Heaven Chief test, he knew the difficulty of the Heaven Chief test. If it wasn't for the fact that he had accumulated enough, he might have failed this time. But why did Bu Fang say that it was a piece of cake? Cough. If you really want to take the Heaven Chief test, you have to wait for 3 days. The Heaven Chief test is a big event. You need to make an appointment in advance and prepare the lightning protection formation. Although you have an Earth Immortal puppet that can swallow lightning punishment, you need the lightning protection formation to be absolutely safe. Manager Chen seemed to feel the seriousness in Bu Fang's voice. He stroked his beard. This time, the onlookers were dumbstruck. What was going on? Did Manager Chen really think that Bu Fang could take the Heaven Chief test? Wasn't he just joking? After Tong Cheng heard their conversation, he kept silent for a long time. After a long time, with a snicker, he burst out laughing. Tong Cheng's laughter silenced the surroundings. His voice lingered, making people look at each other in dismay. It seemed his laughter had infected them. Many youngsters from aristocratic families also laughed. Their laughter was full of mockery and disdain for Bu Fang. You're just a mortal, shamelessly boasting that you want to take the Heaven Chief test. Are you trying to stall for time? Let the Heaven Chief Hall value you, and let the Heaven Chief Hall protect you? It's useless. I said that this earth immortal puppet is mine, so it's mine. Tong Cheng's laughter stopped. It seemed as though tears were rolling down his cheeks. He indifferently looked at Bufang, the corners of his mouth curling into a mocking grin. The onlookers suddenly understood. It turned out that mortal had such a plan. Indeed, he was scheming. Hearing Tong Cheng's self-righteous analysis, Bufang was a little speechless. He rubbed his slender, white fingers. This fellow's imagination was really rich in today's society. No one would believe that someone could take the Heaven Chief test? However, Bufang didn't want to play along with Tong Cheng's act. He picked up the black turtle constellation walk and slowly walked toward the door. Xiao Bai, follow me. Miss Mu, after 3 days, I'll come to take the Heaven Chief test. I hope the lightning protection formation will be ready by then. Bufang's voice drifted over. Tong Cheng's face stiffened. He felt that he was being ignored. He had analyzed a lot of things, and this Bufang should at least cooperate with him and reply. You want to leave? I won't let you. Stay here, and the earth immortal puppet. Stay here too. Boom. Tong Cheng's aura rocketed one more time. He took a step forward, moving as if he had teleported. His speed was extremely fast. Tens of thousands of shadows gathered, dashing toward Bufang. Manager Chen didn't expect that Tong Cheng would take action all of a sudden. He shouted and tried to stop him. However, Tong Cheng seemed to be prepared. A golden light flashed, and a golden figure appeared in front of Manager Chen. Boom! Manager Chen's palm collided with the golden earth immortal puppet, creating a huge explosion. The golden earth immortal puppet was smashed, and it was sent flying backward. No matter what, Manager Chen was at the true immortal realm. His cultivation base was so strong that the golden earth immortal puppet couldn't resist him. Tong Cheng's eyes twinkled. His speed was extremely fast, and in just a blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Bufang. The onlookers were suppressed by this pressure, forcing them to back off. Some even screamed in fear. Stay here. Tong Cheng appeared in front of Bufang, looking down at Bufang with a mocking face. He was just a mortal, and in front of the Tong family's genius, he was just trash. However, shortly after, Tong Cheng's eyes focused. He found that Bufang's eyes were calm. It was so calm that he couldn't help but feel a ripple in his heart. He frowned, looking to the side. There, the earth immortal puppet that could swallow lightning punishment didn't move. It seemed that fellow didn't rely on the earth immortal puppet. What could it be? Even if this guy had become a peak divine spirit realm sovereign realm expert, he was still a true immortal realm expert. A mere mortal wouldn't be able to stop him. No matter what tricks he had, he would smash them all. Rumble. The air around Tong Cheng seemed to be compressed. His terrifying aura surged like waves, constantly rumbling and dispersing. A palm shot out and the void seemed to be smashed, leaving a deep, pitch-black hole. This palm twisted the void with endless power. If this palm landed, even if Bufang didn't die, he would be severely wounded. The onlookers couldn't help but sigh. The eyes of the aristocratic family's juniors were filled with ridicule. Xianyuan Shehui's eyes were filled with regret. Xianyuan Xian's eyes were complicated. Mu Luer's eyes seemed to be unable to bear it. Manager Chen, who had sent the golden earth immortal puppet flying, wanted to take action, but he knew it was too late. It seemed that this little chef was going to suffer a calamity. Under the onlookers' gazes, Bufang didn't dodge. He didn't move. He didn't even blink his eyelashes. He just stood where he was, taking Tong Cheng's palm head-on. In the eyes of the onlookers, Bufang was scared silly by Tong Cheng, poor kid. His eyes were wide open, as if he couldn't die in peace. Boom! Under the regretful and mocking gazes of the onlookers, Tong Cheng's palm hit Bufang's chest. He wanted to shatter Bufang's heart. Tong Cheng's mouth curved into a smile. This mortal, who dared to offend him, would soon be severely wounded. And that earth-immortal puppet would belong to him. However, soon, the smile on Tong Cheng's face froze. His insufferably arrogant eyes were now filled with shock. How could it be? Bu Fang's face was emotionless as he looked at Tong Cheng. The vermilion robe emitted alternating red and white radiance. It took Tong Cheng's palm head-on. There was a cracking sound, as if something had broken. The invincible vermilion robe was broken. However, Bu Fang held the black turtle constellation walk in one hand. With a buzzing sound, the bandage on his arm disappeared, revealing the black and white tattoos on his arm. The bandages fluttered in the wind. The Taotai roared as he raised the black turtle constellation walk. Bu Fang's eyes were calm as he exhaled. Do you really want to get hit by the walk? Tong Cheng pulled himself together. He was bewildered. A moment later, the black walk enlarged in front of him. Chapter 967. Only Manager Chen had the chance to stop Tong Cheng's attack. However, Manager Chen was blocked by Tong Cheng's puppet, so he had lost his best chance to stop Bu Fang. The onlookers could only gawk as they watched Tong Cheng's palm violently hit Bu Fang's chest. That palm was like a thunderstorm that could shatter the illusionary void. Tong Cheng's cultivation base was at the true immortal realm, so his power was really formidable. This punch was enough to crush a mountain and shatter a long river. If that mortal chef were to take this punch head-on, he would probably be smashed into pieces. The power of that punch was really frightening. Mu Luer closed her eyes in despair. With Tong Cheng's punch, Bu Fang would definitely die. There was no doubt about it. Even if Bu Fang's earth-immortal puppet tried to stop it, he wouldn't be able to stop it. What a pity! With Bu Fang's innate talent, if he had enough time, he would have definitely become a Heaven Chief. And now, a future Heaven Chief had fallen here. It was really a pity. Manager Chen sighed helplessly, not taking any more action. Xianyuan Shehui's eyes widened. Was Bu Fang really going to die here? The surrounding audience also held their breath. The aristocratic family's youngsters sneered. A mortal dared to offend an aristocratic family's genius. He really didn't know how to spell the word death. All of a sudden, the scene seemed to freeze strangely. Tong Cheng's punch violently hit Bu Fang's chest. It was like a strong gust of wind was blowing behind Bu Fang, causing his vermilion robe to flutter. However, Bu Fang wasn't hurt at all. He didn't look like he was dying. How could it be? Everybody was a little bewildered. They blinked their eyes, looking at Bu Fang, who wore an indifferent face. At this moment, the air seemed to become really quiet. Tong Cheng was also a little bewildered. His powerful punch had hit Bu Fang, but he didn't even let out a fart. How could this be? Under normal circumstances, Bu Fang should not be able to withstand his punch and should be blasted into smithereens. The scene made all the people who thought Bu Fang was going to die feel shocked and uncertain. Mu Luer covered her eyes in despair, but her surroundings suddenly became silent. She couldn't help but let go of her hand, which was covering her eyes. She looked over and saw Tong Cheng's fist hitting Bu Fang's chest. It was a loving scene. Everyone's expression turned extremely strange. The vermilion robe was invincible, but this invincibility could only block one move. After one move, invincibility would enter cooldown. But it was enough. Wu Di had blocked Tong Cheng's killing strike for Bu Fang, which was enough. Because of the invincible realm's existence, Tong Cheng's punch didn't cause him any discomfort. Perhaps he would feel a slight pain from the impact of the punch. However, with the toughness of Bu Fang's body, this kind of impact didn't hurt him at all. Looking at Tong Cheng, whose face was filled with disbelief, Bu Fang held the black turtle constellation walk with one hand. The bandage on his arm was removed, revealing his black and white arm. His arm bulged like an exploding horned dragon, filled with power. The black turtle constellation wok appeared in his hand. Then, he swung it, aiming at Tong Cheng's head. Tong Cheng couldn't block this wok, because he didn't know how powerful the black turtle constellation wok and the Taotai arm would be when it was at full power. In the past, Bufang could use this move to kill experts who were much stronger than him. But now, Bufang's cultivation base had increased, and his fighting capacity had become more terrifying. If he swung the wok, even an iron head would be smashed. Of course, Tong Cheng's head was much harder than an iron head. After all, he had a true immortal realm cultivation base. Tong Cheng looked at the black turtle constellation wok, which was enlarging in front of him. There was a loud bang. The black turtle constellation wok ruthlessly smashed onto his head, causing his entire body to explode and fly away. Buzz, although there was no blood, Tong Cheng, on the other hand, felt like his head was buzzing. It was as if countless little stars were flying around him. Little stars. F***ck those little stars. Tong Cheng was so enraged that he roared. He shook his head to clear his mind. He looked at Bufang, his face filled with rage. He was dumbfounded by that mortal's wok. This was a disgrace. Bufang wore a calm face. Looking at the enraged Tong Cheng, he exhaled gently. A moment later, his Taotai arm bulged and swung. There was a muffled bang. The black turtle constellation wok struck Tong Cheng's head once again as the onlookers were dumbstruck. This time, Tong Cheng staggered backward. A stream of warm liquid slowly trickled down his nose. Tong Cheng's eyes were dull. His aura had almost scattered. The onlookers didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Young Master Tong Cheng. Was he hit silly? It hurts to look at him. When that black wok hit his head, it sounded like thunder. So terrifying. He's worthy of being young Master Tong Cheng. His head is even harder than an immortal crystal. The onlookers pulled themselves together, discussing animatedly. They looked at Bufang with an odd face. No one had thought that this mortal would dare to fight back. What made them speechless was that young Master Tong Cheng was struck silly by the two wok strikes. His nose was bleeding. Funny, however, he was even more arrogant. With young Master Tong Cheng's status, how could that mortal dare to fight back? How could he hurt him? He was enraged. Infuriated, Tong Cheng wiped off the blood from his nose and let out a deep roar like a wounded beast. His terrifying aura expanded unceasingly from his body. Damned mortal! I'm going to tear you into pieces! Tong Cheng bellowed, his eyes bloodshot. His aura stagnated, shaking everything around him. The entire room seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Streams of true energy swayed behind him like ribbons. They seemed to turn into pillars that could support the sky. Waves of true energy surged. That stream of true energy shattered the roof, which had been smashed by the lightning strike. Crushed stones flew everywhere. The black turtle constellation wok returned to Bufang's hand. Bufang frowned, looking at the enraged Tong Cheng. It seemed he had to show his real power. After his breakthrough, Bufang's mental force skyrocketed. In fact, what made Bufang strong wasn't his cultivation base but his mental force. As a chef, his spirit sea was so vast that it was hard to imagine. It was like a vast ocean. When Bufang had ignited his first divine flame, his mental force, supported by the dragon bone kitchen knife, could rival the peak of the divine spirit realm. Now, Bufang's cultivation base had broken through again, reaching the peak of the divine spirit realm. His mental force seemed to have broken through the shackles to reach the true immortal realm. As his mental force increased, the connection between him and the god of cooking set became sharper. Once he got the dragon bone kitchen knife support, his mental force could reach the level of a 2-star true immortal realm expert. The true immortal realm was different from the divine realm. The divine realm only required one to ignite the divine flame. Although it could strengthen one's mental force, it was chaotic. However, the true immortal realm was different. When one reached the true immortal realm, The strength of his body and mental force would increase by leaps and bounds. The divine spirit realm would open the spirit sea. At the true immortal realm, an origin soul would be condensed above the spirit sea. At the one-star true immortal realm, an origin soul would be condensed above the spirit sea. From the 2-star to the 8-star true immortal realm, an endless sky would appear above the origin soul. 7 stars would appear in that sky, which would use their radiance to refine the origin soul, making it stronger. At the 9-star true immortal realm, the 7 stars would condense the principles, reaching a supreme achievement. Eventually, they would open a small world in their spirit sea. It could be said that the true immortal realm was a truly terrifying realm. After each star breakthrough, the growth of one's cultivation base would be tremendous. The gap between each realm was like a moat between heaven and earth. This was also the reason why Bufang's mental force, with the help of the dragon bone kitchen knife, could only be compared to a 2-star true immortal realm expert. However, it was enough. If Bufang urged the mental force in his spirit sea, he could affect Tong Cheng's will in just a blink of an eye. At that time, he could use the Black Turtle constellation walk to smash Tong Cheng until he fainted. Although he couldn't smash him to death, it was enough to make him question his life. Young Master Tong Cheng. That's enough. All of a sudden, just as Tong Cheng was enraged and Bufang was about to use the dragon bone kitchen knife, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Bufang, standing between Bufang and Tong Cheng. This old man was none other than Manager Chun. This is the Heaven Chief Hall, not your Tong family. If you dare to be presumptuous again, I won't be polite anymore. Manager Chen's face was solemn. Looking at Tong Cheng's continuous bursting of his cultivation base, which had damaged the special grade chef test room, his face became extremely gloomy. He was the manager of the Heaven Chief Hall. To build a special grade chef test room, he had to spend a lot of immortal crystals and resources. Tong Cheng's destruction made his heart bleed. Ignorant old man. Get lost. Today. I must kill this mortal. Tong Cheng's eyes seemed to turn scarlet as he roared angrily. However, his roar was met with Administrator Chen's eyes, which were filled with even more fury. If you dare to be presumptuous again, the Heaven Chief Hall won't be polite anymore. At that time, I will ask the head of the Tong family to come to the Heaven Chief Hall to ask for him. Manager Chun thundered. A moment later, his aura also burst out. The moment Manager Chen's aura burst out from the Heaven Chief Hall, the aura of true immortal realm experts shot up into the sky. No matter what, the Heaven Chief Hall was the force of the City Lord, so its foundation wasn't small. The aura of true immortal realm experts made the faces of the onlookers, including the disciples of the aristocratic families, change. Among those true immortal realm experts, there was a powerful 2-star true immortal realm expert. Under the impact of those auras, Tong Cheng seemed to pull himself together. His aura gradually calmed down, but the murderous intent in his eyes became more condensed. However, as soon as Tong Cheng's aura calmed down, he looked into the distance. His eyes widened and became bloodshot. He almost vomited a mouthful of blood. Bufang was a little bewildered. The onlookers were also bewildered. They turned around to look. Little White slowly walked to the side of the golden puppet that was almost shattered by Manager Chen's palm strike. The palm that was like a cattail leaf fan suddenly descended, grabbed the golden puppet's head, and lifted it up. A moment later, the onlookers took in a breath of cold air. The golden puppet was torn to shreds. Boom! Boom! Its materials scattered on the ground as Xiao Bai reached out his hand to search the puppet's body. Eventually, he took out an orange-yellow core crystal. Grabbing the crystal, a black hole appeared on Xiao Bai's abdomen. The crystal was shoved into his stomach, making a cracking sound. Instantly, the crystal was swallowed. Tui! Tong Cheng stared blankly at the scene. He was so angry that his lips shivered. He had lost another Earth Immortal puppet. Moreover, the core of the Earth Immortal puppet was eaten. It was like going for wool and coming home shorn. The corners of the onlookers' mouths twitched. No one had expected such an outcome. In the end, Tong Cheng was the one who suffered a loss. Bu Fong has agreed to our Heaven Chief Hall's Heaven Chief test. Young Master Tong Cheng, please don't hold back. Wait until the end of the Heaven Chief's test before you make your decision. Manager Chen didn't care about Tong Cheng, whose heart was dripping blood. After the Heaven Chief's test, if Bu Fong doesn't become the Heaven Chief, you can do whatever you want with him. If he becomes the Heaven Chief, you can settle your grudges among yourselves. It has nothing to do with the Heaven Chief Hall. Tong Cheng's chest heaved. Although he was a genius of the Tong family, he didn't dare to act presumptuously in front of the Heaven Chief Hall. After all, the Heaven Chief Hall had the support of the City Lord's mansion. The day the Heaven Chief's test ends is the day you die, mortal. Tong Cheng coldly looked at the emotionless Bu Fong. Then, he angrily shouted, flicked his sleeves, and stormed out. His body turned into a jet of light, dashing out of the room and disappearing from people's sight. It was over. The onlookers looked at Bu Fong strangely, then left the room. Bu Fong nodded to Manager Chen, scattering the black turtle constellation wok and the dragon bone kitchen knife. Clasping his hands, he leisurely walked out of the room. Xiao Bai, who had swallowed a crystal core, followed behind Bu Fong. A human and a puppet quickly disappeared from the special grade chef test room. Manager Chen looked at Bu Fong's back, taking a deep breath. What a miraculous mortal! 3 days from now, you will decide your fate. Whether you live or die depends on your luck. Anyway, how did that kid block Tong Cheng's punch? Manager Chen thought about Bu Fong, who had received Tong Cheng's punch but wasn't hurt at all. He was still confused. Mu Luer walked to Manager Chen's side and lightly sighed. Thank you, Manager Chen, for helping me, said Mu Luer. Young Pavilion Master, I'm just doing what I should do. Since Bu Fong has accepted the Heaven Chief's test, we can't just watch him get beaten to death in the Heaven Chief Hall, said Manager Chen casually. Yeah, he dared to accept the Heaven Chief's test. I can't see through that mortal, muttered Mu Luer. Mu Luer mumbled. Tong Cheng's body crossed the void like a jet of light, landing hard on the ground. His face was so dark that it looked like it was about to drip water. His mind flickered, and another Earth Immortal puppet appeared in front of him. His mental force surged. A moment later, Tong Cheng's mental force poured into the Earth Immortal puppet, making its aura rise unceasingly as though it was about to explode. Find that mortal for me. I want to know where he is staying in the Immortal City. If you have a chance, kill him. I'm not the kind of person who will wait for the Heaven Chief's test. On the long street, Bu Fong and Xiao Bai were walking slowly. All of a sudden, Bu Fong quickened his pace, his heart filled with anticipation. He couldn't wait to see what the new branch looked like. Chapter 968. Xiao Bai stood behind Bu Fong. After swallowing the lightning punishment and the Earth Immortal puppet's core, Xiao Bai looked even more profound. At this moment, Bu Fong was a little bewildered. He stood in front of a restaurant, looking at it. He couldn't help but rub his head. This restaurant wasn't chosen by Bu Fong. After Bu Fong had passed the special grade chef test, the system had chosen it and told it to Bu Fong. At first, Bu Fong was excited. If it was the system's product, it must be the best. However, shortly after, Bu Fong found that he was wrong. When he saw this small restaurant, he felt like 10,000 black dogs were running in his heart, their faces mocking him. Pushing the door, Bu Fong stepped into this brand new restaurant. However, as soon as the door was pushed open, Bu Fong's eyes brightened. He stepped into the restaurant with a slightly surprised expression. The system had given him another surprise this time. Indeed, it was a surprise. This restaurant was totally different from the restaurants that Bu Fong was familiar with. The decoration style didn't follow the style of Fong Fong's little store. Many places had changed. As soon as he entered the restaurant, he saw that there weren't many square tables in the restaurant. Or rather, there weren't many tables in the restaurant. Since the restaurant wasn't big, it looked a little crowded. Thus, the dining tables were built around the kitchen. The dining tables were arranged in a circle, facing the kitchen. The kitchen was sealed with an ice-cold bronze door, so people couldn't see what was inside. However, it also made people curious. Of course, although the decorations were different, the restaurant's decoration was still the same. It was warm and cozy. As soon as he stepped into the restaurant, he felt calm. It seemed that once he entered the restaurant, all of his worries would vanish. Bufang slowly walked around the restaurant. This restaurant was like the Fong Fong restaurant when Bufang had just traveled to this world. Everything was brand new. Of course, as a chef, Bufang still cared about the kitchen. Although the dining tables were arranged in a circle and surrounded the kitchen, there was still a space for people to pass through. Bufang walked along the passageway to the bronze gate and pushed it open. Unexpectedly, the bronze door was not as heavy as he had imagined. Instead, it was very light. It was effortless for him to push it open. He stepped into the kitchen. Only then did Bufang exhale a long breath. The decorations in the kitchen hadn't changed much. Everything looked so familiar. This was normal. A good chef would naturally have familiar equipment and a kitchen. Only in this way could he cook delicious dishes. This was because the degree of familiarity with the tools would affect the mood of the chef to a large extent. After playing with the tools in the kitchen for a while, Bufang walked out of the kitchen. As soon as he came out, he was faced with the dining tables. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth. The system's arrangement was quite interesting. If he came out of the kitchen, the first thing he would see would be the sincere eyes of the diners. There's always a creepy feeling. Host, please note that the restaurant has just been established. The host has one chance to choose a name for the restaurant. In his head, the serious voice of the system echoed. This made Bufang a little surprised. Then, he smiled playfully. The name of the restaurant? Choose a name. What kind of names are there for me to choose? Bufang asked. The system was silent for a while. It didn't answer Bufang right away. Soon, the system replied again. Restaurant names. Heaven Chief Restaurant, Heaven Chief Restaurant, Heaven Chief Residence. The system's voice was calm. However, after listening to it, Bufang's heart wasn't calm. System, your naming skills are not bad. Can't you be more creative? Bufang mercilessly expressed his disdain for the system. Regarding Bufang's words, the system chose to ignore it. Little Black, Xiao Bai Hua. Bufang's naming skills. The system said, where did you get the F*King confidence to look down on others? Heaven Chief Residence, out of the game? This kind of name can also be in the list? Bufang expressionlessly ridiculed the system. In the end, Bufang didn't struggle too much. Then Heaven Chief Restaurant it is, Bufang said, rubbing his forehead. Buzz, as soon as Bufang's voice fell, his mind flickered. He strode out of the restaurant, turning his head to look at the restaurant's door. Above the door, there was a horizontal board with the words, Heaven Chief Restaurant written in a natural and artistic manner. Bufang nodded in satisfaction. Now, he had a restaurant that belonged to him in the Immortal City. He closed the restaurant's door. Bufang took Xiao Bai, turning around and leaving. He wanted to go back to the inn and bring the others here. The inn wasn't far from the restaurant. In just a short while, they arrived at the inn's ground floor. Standing on the ground floor, Bufang furrowed his brows. He turned his head to look behind him, feeling something strange. However, he couldn't tell what was strange about it. Clasping his hands, Bufang didn't think too much about it. He directly went upstairs. After Bufang went upstairs, a golden figure appeared at the inn's entrance. That golden figure was shaking unceasingly, as though its body couldn't bear the formidable energy contained in its body. That puppet was the one Tong Cheng had released. This earth immortal puppet had fused with Tong Cheng's mental force, which made it extremely powerful. It could almost use half of Tong Cheng's cultivation base. However, this earth immortal puppet's material wasn't good enough. After several hours, it would explode. However, several hours were enough for the earth immortal puppet to complete the task Tong Cheng had given it. Bu Fang returned to his room in the inn. He pushed the door open, and the situation inside didn't change much. The Black Dragon King was playing with his daughter, Hua, while Hua was by Lord Go's side. She squinted, enjoying the Lord Go's aura. Hades' Era leaned against the door, holding a spicy strip in his mouth. His face was solemn. Yu was sitting on the netherworld ship, swinging her slender, white legs. When they saw Bu Fang return, their eyes brightened. Bu Fang's return meant that they would have something to eat. Bu Fang, young man, I heard that you went to take the special grade chef test. Did it go well? Hades' Era asked with a spicy strip in his mouth. Bu Fang looked at Hades' Era and nodded. Just daily cooking. I'm a special grade chef now. Alright. I've found a restaurant. We should move there now. Bu Fang said. Hades' Era listened to Bu Fang and his eyes brightened. You've found a restaurant? Are we going to open a restaurant in the Immortal City? Bu Fang nodded. Immediately, they left the restaurant excitedly. Of course, Lord Dog still had a sleepy face as he was dragged away by Nether King Erha. Even if he was dragged away, he still did not wake up. This fat dog was getting better at sleeping. Bu Fang went to the front desk of the inn. After paying the immortal crystals for the room, he walked out of the inn with a smile on the waiter's face. The group walked out. Hades' Era, who was standing next to Bu Fang, suddenly felt something. Seems like someone wants to do something. Hades' Era blinked, looking at Bu Fang. Of course, he could feel the change in Bu Fang's aura. At first, he had just ignited one divine flame at the divine spirit realm, but now, he had reached the peak of the divine spirit realm. Bu Fang's breakthrough always surprised people. Swish! A stifling sound of air exploding echoed. A moment later, the air rumbled unceasingly. A golden energy ball shot toward Bu Fang. Because of its fast speed, the energy ball became a little oval. Bu Fang furrowed his brows. Hades' Era held a spicy strip in his mouth. His mouth moved, making the spicy strip move up and down. Then, with a slap, he thrust out his palm. His palm hit the energy ball. Bu Fang opened his hand and grabbed the energy ball. Sizzle! The energy ball spun unceasingly on Hades' Era's palm. Hades' Era made a sound of surprise, his eyes slightly twitching. Interesting. The power of the divine, ethereal realm. The corners of Hades' Era's mouth rose. The divine, ethereal realm was considered a good existence in the earth prison of the netherworld. His palm squeezed, and the energy ball was crushed. Thousands of light beams scattered. Bu Fang, young man, who did you offend this time? Hades' Era glanced at Bu Fang, smiling. This time, the opponent is really strong. I will give you a fair price. 10 spicy strips for one attack from I. What do you think? 10 spicy strips. Ever since Hades' Era learned how to bargain, his price was getting more and more insatiable. Bu Fang arched his brows, looking at Hades' Era. This time, the opponent isn't ordinary. He's an expert at the divine, ethereal realm. Do you know the divine, ethereal realm? It's the true, immortal realm you guys are talking about. Hades' Era saw the distrust in Bu Fang's eyes, so he hurried to explain. He, Nether King Erha, always did business in an open and aboveboard manner. He never took small advantages. True immortal realm? Bu Fang furrowed his brows. A true immortal realm expert wanted to deal with him? Was it Tong Cheng? No. It couldn't be. Tong Cheng was a member of the Tong family. Since he had promised the Heaven Chief Hall, he wouldn't attack him openly. Otherwise, the Heaven Chief Hall would turn its back on him. At that time, Tong Ching would be in big trouble. If it wasn't Tong Ching, who could it be? Boom! Boom! Explosions echoed unceasingly in the air. In the next moment, golden energy balls shot out from every corner. Is it fun to hide in a corner and ambush people? Hades' Era rolled his eyes, and the spicy strip in his mouth trembled. Hades' Era snapped his fingers, and nether energy shot up into the sky from under his feet. The nether energy rose around him, quickly turning into a storm. Boom! 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 The golden energy balls hit the nether energy storm, but they didn't even shake it. The golden energy balls were all bounced off. Boom! Boom! The bounced energy balls splashed everywhere, causing the surrounding ground to be full of holes and craters. With a swoosh, the nether energy scattered. Everyone revealed themselves. The passers-by, who had been frightened by the battle, retreated and watched from a distance. They didn't dare to approach. Clanging sounds echoed. A golden figure slowly approached from a distance, amidst the smoke and dust. The golden figure was filled with violent energy. The energy surged as though it wanted to shatter the air. The violent energy made the golden figure tremble unceasingly. A puppet? Hades' Era widened his eyes. Bufang was a little bewildered. Bufang, young man, you're not worth enough. The other has sent only one puppet to deal with you. They're looking down on you. 10 spicy strips, and I will help you dismantle that puppet. Hades' Era looked at Bufang, his eyes shining. As soon as Hades' Era's voice faded, his face turned the color of a pig's liver. Buzz, the Lord Go, who was lying on the ground, rolled his eyes. He extended his exquisite paw, gently patting the golden puppet in the distance. Tens of thousands of beams of energy congregated, forming an exquisite dog paw. The dog paw fell. The golden earth immortal puppet didn't have time to react. It was smashed into the ground, shattering into pieces. The violent energy didn't burst out at all. It died. Don't bother. It's just a paw. Bufang kid, remember to cook a plate of sweet and sour ribs for me, the Lord Go. The Lord Go isn't picky. Dragon meat is fine. The Lord Go yawned sleepily, talking to Bufang. Then, he glanced at the bald black dragon king, who was glaring at him. Chapter 969. Just a paw, yeah, it was just a paw's matter. Hades' Era looked at the golden puppet that had been smashed into smithereens, his mouth twitching. He had never thought that this shameless dog would suddenly attack him. The most important thing was, this was clearly a business deal that he had negotiated. The 10 delicious spicy strips had left him just like that. His heart was so sad that he couldn't breathe. Lord Go stuck his tongue out and exhaled, indifferently glancing at Hades' Era. Lord Go only wants a serving of sweet and sour ribs, preferably with dragon meat. Unlike you, who still wants to bargain. If you have so much energy, why don't you just use your paw to solve the problem? Lord Go said. Hades' Era's eyes were filled with grief and indignation. You're right. How can I refute you? The Black Dragon King was also annoyed. He didn't understand why this black dog always wanted Bufang to cook him. What's so good about dragon meat? This Dragon King has never tasted it before. Moreover, we're partners who love each other. How can we eat dragon meat? The Black Dragon King's bald head glowed, as if it was about to shine. Hua rode on the Black Dragon King's neck, patting his bald head with her small palm, giggling. Let's go to the restaurant, Bufang said. The others nodded, following him. Although Hades' Era was sad, he didn't have any way to deal with it. He couldn't do anything to that mangy dog. If it were before, he could teach that mangy dog to be a dog. They disappeared from the long street just like that. The people around didn't dare to breathe loudly, watching them leave. The ground around had been smashed, and the onlookers thought that a big battle was about to happen. They didn't expect that the result would be so simple. The golden puppet that attacked was so strong, and it seemed to have reached the true immortal realm. However, it was smashed by a dog's paw. Were all dogs so awesome now? How could they eat dog meat in the future? Tui! He spat out a mouthful of blood. Tong Cheng was sitting in a tea-house, drinking good wine. His face changed instantly. Eventually, he opened his mouth, spitting out blood mixed with wine. His eyes were instantly covered with a layer of blood veins. His head felt like it was being pricked by countless needles. This pain almost drove him crazy. Ouch! Damn it! Could it be that the Earth Immortal puppet was destroyed again? Tong Cheng's eyes were bloodshot. He sat on the chair, clenching his fists and curling his lips. When the Earth Immortal puppet he sent to the lower worlds was destroyed, he had already experienced this kind of pain. That was the result of the mental energy he sent into the Earth Immortal puppet being brutally crushed. This time, there was no doubt that the Earth Immortal puppet he sent to deal with the mortal chef was also destroyed, that mortal. Even if he were to be hacked into pieces, it wouldn't be too much. He grabbed the bottle of wine and poured it on his face. The cold wine splashed on Tong Cheng's face, which made him sober up a lot. Boom! The jar of wine was emptied, and it was ruthlessly smashed onto the ground, shattering into pieces. I will never forgive you. 3 days from now will be the day you die. Tong Cheng endured the needle-pricking pain in his head as he swore. Squeak! He pushed the restaurant's door open. Hades Era, the Black Dragon King, and the others entered the restaurant one after another. Oh my God! Bufang, young man, where did you find this restaurant? Why is it as small as a dog's kennel? Nether King Er Ha looked at the restaurant, which was much smaller than the one in the Hidden Dragon continent, and asked in surprise. The Black Dragon King, who was also bald, widened his eyes. The place was remote and the restaurant was small. Bufang, my little friend, didn't you want to do business? Lord Go strode his elegant cat-like steps into the restaurant. He lifted his dog eyes, indifferently scanning the place. Eventually, his eyes landed on Hades Era. Why do you look down on a dog's kennel? Moreover, who told you that a dog's kennel is small? I look down on a dog's kennel. What about it? You mangy dog, do you want to fight with I? I don't like you for a long time. Come on. Hades Era rolled his eyes, rolling up his sleeves like a ruffian. Lord Go rolled his eyes. He didn't want to pay attention to this idiot. Retard, after the Lord Go said some gentle words, he found a corner in the restaurant and nestled there. Hua jumped down from the Black Dragon King's neck, landing steadily on the ground. No matter what, she was a 7-colored sky-devouring python, and her cultivation base wasn't weak. She ran happily to the Lord Go, hugging Lord Go's thigh, her face contented. The Black Dragon King's face darkened. Did his daughter take him as her mount? It's a little small. I don't have a place to put the Netherworld ship. You scanned the entire restaurant, furrowing her beautiful brows. There's a special room upstairs. You can stay there, Bufang said, glancing at you. Then, Bufang took the lead, heading upstairs. Upstairs, the space was quite spacious and there were many rooms. Hades Era's eyes brightened. Did he have his own room? You pursed her lips, feeling a little happy in her heart. After the rooms were assigned, they went downstairs. The Black Dragon King stubbornly asked for a room, but he naturally had to pay a price to get a room. Bufang looked at the Black Dragon King, saying, "You can be a waiter in this restaurant to pay the rent." Hearing this, the Black Dragon King's eyes widened. I'm the Black Dragon King of the Endless Sea. I can turn the clouds and rain with one hand, a supreme existence. How can I be a waiter in this shabby restaurant of yours? The Black Dragon King's nostrils flared, saying. However, Bufang didn't answer him. He just looked at him indifferently, which made the Black Dragon King feel awkward. The Black Dragon King thought about it. As a black dragon, if he walked out, he would be killed in less than half a day. This world was much more dangerous than the Hidden Dragon continent. There were many true Immortal Realm experts here, And the most important thing was, the true immortal realm experts were all F*King chef. If he left the restaurant, he would become a F*King moving ingredient, the kind that everyone loved. At that time, he would become the so-called sweet and sour dragon ribs. Good. A waiter is such a noble profession, which suits the Black Dragon King's dignified identity. The Black Dragon King rubbed his bald head, saying seriously, "It's not that hard to be a waiter. You just have to serve the dishes and settle the bill. It's okay if you don't have IQ, Bufang said casually, glancing at the Black Dragon King. The Black Dragon King was bewildered. Was Bufang complimenting him? Bufang didn't mind the Black Dragon King. He walked to the door, pushing it open. Okay, since everything is ready, let's start the business. Buzz, however, right at this moment, the system's serious voice echoed in Bufang's head. Temporary task. As a brand new restaurant, how can we not have an opening ceremony? Please invite at least 3 colleagues to attend the opening ceremony of Heaven Chief Restaurant. Task reward: dreamy soup dumplings. The system suddenly issued a temporary task, which made Bufang dumbstruck. Opening ceremony? There was such a thing? Why didn't this happen before the opening of the restaurant? Bufang rubbed his head. He had to invite 3 colleagues to attend the opening ceremony? This was a little troublesome. In the Heaven Chief Restaurant, he didn't have many acquaintances. How could he invite them? Xianyuan Shihui was one, and Mu Luo was another. Who else could he invite? Manager Chen? Or Tong Cheng? Rubbing his chin, Bufang finally decided on the list of invitees. Entering the kitchen, Bufang began to work. Soon, he walked out with 3 simple invitations in his hand. He called the Black Dragon King. The Black Dragon King rubbed his bald head. Just now, he was playing with his daughter. When he was called by Bufang, his heart was a little emotional. When he heard that Bufang had asked him to send the invitations, his first reaction was to refuse. What a joke! In the eyes of those chefs in the Heaven Chief Restaurant, he was just a moving ingredient. If he went to send the invitations, he didn't know if he could come back alive. Even if he came back, he didn't know if he would lose his arms or legs. However, under Bufang's cold and emotionless gaze, the Black Dragon King finally chose to compromise. Holding the 3 invitations in his hand, he wrapped himself tightly in his black cloak and left the restaurant to deliver the invitations. Bufang sat at the table, gently exhaling. He took out a template, using a pen to write and draw on the wooden board. Shortly after, he wrote a menu. There were only 3 dishes on the menu. Hot pot, barbecue, blood lobster. Moreover, under the 3 dishes, there was a line of small, crooked words: order whatever you want to eat. Bufang's handwriting was indeed a sharp contrast with his cooking skills. He almost couldn't see what he was writing. However, Bufang was satisfied. After admiring his handwriting for a while, he hung the menu on the wall. Order whatever you want to eat. As long as he could cook it, as long as he was willing to cook it. Indeed, he was an arrogant chef. Because of the remote location and the restaurant's small space, even if he opened the door, no one would come in. On the other side, the Black Dragon King was like a chicken thief, holding the invitations as he came to Xianyuan Xiaohui's nameless restaurant. As soon as the Black Dragon King entered the restaurant, he was stopped by the sharp-eyed Xianyuan Xian. "Who is it?" Xianyuan Xian shouted. His eyes were full of vigilance toward the sneaky Black Dragon King. The Black Dragon King laughed awkwardly. "I'm looking for your brother. There are many people looking for my brother. Who do you think you are?" Xianyuan Xian said. Since her brother had become the Heaven Chief, more and more people came to look for her brother. Some came to congratulate him, some came to rope him in, and some just wanted to bask in the happiness. Who did he think he was? The Black Dragon King almost choked on his saliva. He didn't want to talk nonsense with this big-breasted, brainless woman. He took out the invitation and handed it to Xianyuan Xian. This is the invitation that Bufang, my little friend, asked me to give you. Take it. Xianyuan Xian received the invitation with a suspicious face. Seeing the crooked handwriting, his brows arched. An invitation. The opening of the Heaven Chief restaurant, please come. You mean, Bufang wants to open a restaurant and invited my brother? Xianyuan Xian asked, waving the invitation. Yes, but I don't think you were invited, the Black Dragon King said honestly. Xianyuan Xian rolled his eyes. This guy. He said that he would take the Heaven Chief examination in 3 days. Instead of practicing his cooking skills, he is holding an opening ceremony? Have you already given up on yourself? The Black Dragon King didn't say anything. He only had 2 invitations left in his hand, so he ran away dejectedly. He still needed to hand over the invitations to the other 2. Xianyuan Xian looked at the back of the Black Dragon King as he left. He patted the invitation and curled his lips. The handwriting on this invitation is so ugly. In the Heaven Chief restaurant, Bufang sneezed. He looked around expressionlessly, feeling a little confused. Then, he stood up, stepped into the kitchen, and began to prepare the dishes for the opening ceremony. For the opening ceremony, according to the system's requirements, he needed to make good dishes to let the diners feel the restaurant's heritage. And Bufang wanted to give Xianyuan Shehui and the others a big surprise. Chapter 970. The Black Dragon King returned with a dark face. After delivering the invitation to Xianyuan Shehui, he hurried to the Heaven Chief Hall. In there, he felt really uncomfortable. Everyone looked at him with a strange look in their eyes. As a moving ingredient, the Black Dragon King felt his little heart palpitating unceasingly. Fortunately, the invitation was delivered successfully. As soon as he returned to the restaurant, the Black Dragon King felt as though his entire body was about to collapse. His black robe was lifted and he slumped on the ground. Hua was sitting by Lord Go, absorbing the spirit energy of heaven and earth to cultivate. The spirit energy of heaven and earth in the Heaven Chief realm was much thicker than in the Hidden Dragon continent. That was why Hua's cultivation base had been increasing rapidly recently. Daughter, come here and give your father a hug. Your father needs some psychological comfort, the Black Dragon King shouted at Hua, who was in the distance. Hua was a little bewildered. Then, she turned around and hugged Lord Go's thigh. The Black Dragon King pursed his lips. He couldn't help but raise his hand to cover his mouth. He felt as though an invisible arrow had pierced his chest. That damned mangy dog! How dare you seduce my daughter? In the kitchen, Bufang seemed to have heard the Black Dragon King's movement. Then, he slowly walked out of the kitchen. Bufang wore a mask, revealing only his eyes. The vermilion robe on his body was sparkling with radiance. You're back? You've finished delivering the invitations, right? Bufang asked the Black Dragon King. However, the Black Dragon King replied to him with a resentful gaze, as though he was looking at a young wife. This gaze made Bufang's hair stand on end. If you have something to say, just say it. We're on the same side, Bufang said. Bufang, my little friend, this Dragon King just wants to quietly be a handsome man in this restaurant. In the future, don't ask this Dragon King for this kind of public job, the Black Dragon King said sincerely. Bufang's brows arched, glancing at the Black Dragon King's bald head. Quietly be a bald head? Well, there shouldn't be any more invitations in the future anyway. You came back just in time. I'm experimenting with a new dish. You can try it later, Bufang said. After that, he turned around and returned to the kitchen. There's food? When the Black Dragon King heard Bufang's words, his eyes immediately lit up. He crawled up from the ground and sat on the chair. The dining tables in the restaurant were arranged in a circle, facing the kitchen. Although he couldn't see what was going on in the kitchen, the Black Dragon King was looking forward to it. This kind of arrangement is not bad. Rubbing his bald head, The Black Dragon King felt a little expectant. Little friend Bufang's new dish? Hades' Era walked down the stairs with a spicy strip in his mouth. He happened to see the Black Dragon King sitting at the dining table with a face full of anticipation. Hades' Era's eyes immediately lit up. Old Black, what are you doing? The Black Dragon King glanced at Hades' Era and said, Nothing much, I'm just waiting to eat. My little friend Bufang is preparing to let me taste a new dish. A new dish? Hades' Era's eyes instantly lit up. A new dish? Interesting. I happen to have nothing to do, so I will accompany you to taste it. Are you surprised? After Hades' Era finished speaking, he sat beside the Black Dragon King, facing the direction of the kitchen. They were all looking forward to Bufang's new dish. A wave of fragrance wafted out from the kitchen, causing the Black Dragon King and Hades' Era to squint their eyes. The fragrance of a new dish? No. Why does it feel so familiar? Hades' Era squinted his eyes and wrinkled his nose. Familiar? I'm not familiar, but it smells so good. The Black Dragon King also squinted his eyes and wrinkled his nose. No, it's very familiar. It seems to be the smell of papillion meat. Dragon meat? The Black Dragon King's brows twitched. Dingling. The metal bell hanging on the kitchen's door frame instantly rang. Bufang walked out of the kitchen with a piping hot dish in his hand. Steam billowed from it. A new dish. Hades' Era's eyes widened. The Black Dragon King was also puzzled. This is black as sweet and sour papillion ribs to thank him for his claws just now, said Bufang, who was wearing a mask. Hades' Era's face darkened. It was his 10 spicy strips. When Lord Go smelled the sweet and sour ribs, he instantly woke up. He crawled up and laid on the table. Bufang placed the sweet and sour ribs in front of Lord Go. Lord Go snorted, then started to eat. Wait for the new dish. It will be ready soon, Bufang said. Then, he went back to the kitchen. Munch, munch. In the quiet restaurant, only the sound of breathing could be heard. Only the sound of Lord Go munching on the sweet and sour ribs could be heard. That sound was hearty, filled with the happiness of being conquered by delicious food. Hades' Era took out the last spicy strip. His hand trembled as he stuffed the spicy strip into his mouth, then started to move it in and out. After a while, ring, ring. The metal bell hanging on the kitchen door rang again, which meant that Bufang had come out with a new dish. The Black Dragon King and Hades' Era instantly looked at the skinny figure walking out of the kitchen with a face full of expectation. A wave of thick smell slowly wafted out of the kitchen, blurred. The Black Dragon King's face instantly froze. His widened nostrils shrank the moment he smelled the smell, and his face darkened. He couldn't help but let out a vomiting sound. Hades' Era's face was lifeless. In the next instant, he covered his nose, his face darkening. Bufang, young man, is this a new dish? Isn't this King Stinky Tofu? Bufang, who was wearing a mask, walked out with a plate of stinky tofu. He placed the stinky tofu in front of the Black Dragon King and Hades' Era. No. This is a new and improved version of the stinky tofu. Not only has the stench been upgraded, but the taste has also been upgraded. It's for the opening ceremony tomorrow, Bufang said, his face expressionless. It's still King Stinky Tofu. Hades' Era screamed indignantly. Why did that mangy dog get to eat the delicious sweet and sour dragon ribs, while he had to eat this King Stinky Tofu? No, this isn't an ordinary stinky tofu. Try it and you will know, Bufang said. The Black Dragon King and Hades' Era exchanged looks, seeing the despair in each other's eyes. Picking up the chopsticks, the Black Dragon King's mouth trembled. If he knew that the new dish was this thing, the Black Dragon King wouldn't have foolishly waited at the table. He had never eaten stinky tofu before, so he didn't understand how magical it was. Hades' Era had eaten stinky tofu before, but this time, the stinky tofu was even more stinky. The Black Dragon King was a little frightened. Compared to Hades' era, he was even more frightened. All of a sudden, he turned his head and looked at Hades' era, who picked up a black square piece of stinky tofu with a helpless face. His teeth were chattering. Then, the Nether King opened his mouth wide, and the pitch-black square piece of stinky tofu, which was emitting a thick stench, was stuffed into his mouth by the Nether King. Gulp, the Black Dragon King swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Why did he feel that it had such a heavy taste? Munch, munch, Hades' era began to chew. The sound of chewing lingered in the Black Dragon King's ears, making him feel as though he was listening to a piece of despairing music. How is it? Bufang looked at Hades' era, asking expectantly. The taste is more delicious, and the spirit energy is more abundant. However, the texture isn't much different from the previous stinky tofu. There are still some differences. The stench is thicker. Hades' era grinned. His teeth were stained with black pieces of stinky tofu as he spoke. Bufang nodded. It seemed he hadn't improved it enough. You guys eat first. I'm going to improve it, Bufang said. Then, he went back to the kitchen. The Black Dragon King looked at Bufang, then at Hades' era, who had picked up the second piece of stinky tofu. He felt as though his world was collapsing. This **T-like thing. How could Hades' era eat it so happily? Do you want a piece? Hades' era asked the Black Dragon King. The Black Dragon King opened his mouth, hesitating. Hades' era's eyes focused. A moment later, his chopsticks moved, picking up a piece of stinky tofu and shoving it into the Black Dragon King's mouth. The Black Dragon King's entire body stiffened. The stench started to spread in his mouth. Tomorrow, Owner Boo would use this dish to entertain the guests for his opening ceremony? The Black Dragon King could already feel the despair of those customers tomorrow. Tong Cheng's eyes were bloodshot and he was panting hard. He was holding a jade talisman in his hand. It was the information his subordinate in the Heaven Chief Hall had sent him. That mortal chef is going to hold an opening ceremony tomorrow? He has invited Xianyuan Shehui and the others. Tong Cheng crushed the jade talisman. His chest was panting hard, and the corners of his mouth rose. Opening ceremony? What nonsense! The Heaven Chief's exam is around the corner, and he chose to open a restaurant. That mortal is courting death. I want to see what kind of restaurant he's going to open. 3 days later, if Bufang didn't pass the Heaven Chief's exam and he wanted to deal with Bufang, the people in the Heaven Chief Hall wouldn't stop him. At that time, he would let that mortal understand the consequences of offending him, Tong Cheng. Moreover, that magical earth immortal puppet would become Tong Cheng's. The next day, the sky had just brightened. Xianyuan Shehui took off her chef robe and changed into casual clothes. She had received an invitation to attend Bufang's opening ceremony. After closing the restaurant's door, Xianyuan Xian, who was wearing a tight-fitting dress, showed off her exquisite and well-proportioned body. Her voluptuous body was really eye-catching. Brother, that mortal will attend the Heaven Chief's exam in 2 days, but he chose to open his restaurant now. Is he stupid? Xianyuan Xian held Xianyuan Shehui's arm as she asked. Although Owner Bu is from the mortal world, he always gives people a mysterious feeling. Perhaps he really has some trump cards, Xianyuan Shehui said after thinking for a while. Following the address on the invitation, the two of them walked slowly. The new Heaven Chief, Xianyuan Shehui, attracted many people's attention as soon as they walked out of the door. It wasn't just because of Xianyuan Xian's pretty face and voluptuous body. It was mainly because of Xianyuan Shehui's identity as the Heaven Chief. Many people followed behind them, wanting to see what they were going to do. Miss Mu and Manager Chen, are you also going to attend Bufang's opening ceremony? On the way, Xianyuan Shehui met the meticulous Manager Chen and Mu Luer, who had a smile on her face. Manager Chen's face was a little ugly as he nodded his head. This Bufang really doesn't take the Heaven Chief's exam seriously. The exam is just around the corner, and he actually chose to open his restaurant. This old man has taken so many Heaven Chief's exams, but I have never seen such a reckless young man. Manager Chen was obviously a little angry about Bufang's opening ceremony, so he coldly snorted. Perhaps Bufang has a card up his sleeve? Mu Luer gently smiled. Young pavilion master, don't speak up for that kid. It's not right to open his restaurant at this time. Manager Chen said with a cold face. This old man wants to see what that kid is going to do. The four of them talked as they walked, and behind them, there were many onlookers. Soon, they arrived at the address described in the invitation. Looking at the small and remote restaurant in front of them, the four of them looked at each other in dismay, their faces filled with confusion. Looking at each other, the four of them felt a little helpless. They pushed open the restaurant's door and stepped inside. However, as soon as the door was pushed open, a thick smell assailed their nostrils. The four of them instantly had an earth-shattering change. Chapter 971. This smell? Did they come to the wrong door? Was this a restaurant and not a toilet? Everyone pushed open the restaurant's door. They weren't mentally prepared at all. When they smelled the thick smell, their minds suffered a huge blow. The muscles all over Xianyuan Xiaohui's body trembled, and he took a step back. Xianyuan Xian, who was standing beside him, couldn't bear it. He directly covered his mouth. Mu Luer was fine, but the gentle smile on her face froze. She awkwardly picked up the invitation in her hand to check if she had come to the wrong place. Manager Chen's dark face became even darker. He let out a long sigh, and the veins on his forehead bulged. It was as though he was a barrel of gunpowder that was about to be ignited. As they stepped into the restaurant, the onlookers following behind them suddenly looked at this restaurant in a corner of the city in shock. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. This restaurant, was it opened by a hidden Heaven Chief? It actually attracted the newly promoted Heaven Chief Xianyuan Xiaohui and the big shots of the Heaven Chief Hall. When the news spread, many people narrowed their eyes and a light flashed in their eyes. Then, the news spread like wildfire, and many people gathered in front of the restaurant. Did you see that? It's a restaurant with a name. Oh my God! When did such a restaurant open in this remote corner? It really has a name. Unbelievable! A restaurant with a name. Could it be that the Heaven Chief really opened it? The Heaven Chief's restaurant is actually so close to us. It's really unbelievable. The onlookers excitedly discussed among themselves. They couldn't wait to enter the restaurant and taste the delicacies. However, many people were hesitant. When Xianyuan Xiaohui and the others stepped into the restaurant, they had to endure it with great patience. They entered the restaurant and began to look around. The restaurant's layout made their eyes light up. It was different from ordinary restaurants. This restaurant was very small, but the tables were arranged in a circle, blocking the kitchen door. This kind of arrangement was very shocking at first glance. Xianyuan Xiaohui held his breath and slowly walked around the restaurant. Soon, his eyes lit up when he saw the menu board hanging on the wall. Hot pot, barbecue, blood lobster. Seems like this is the right place. I've eaten blood lobster before. It's very fragrant, spicy, and delicious, Xianyuan Xiaohui said. However, compared to the fragrance of the spicy blood lobsters, there was only a stench in the restaurant. Is this the smell a chef should make? The stench was overwhelming. It's an insult to the identity of a chef. Manager Chen was enraged to the extreme and his face turned extremely gloomy. A chef should cook fragrant dishes to stimulate the appetite of the customers. Creating this kind of stench was an insult to the profession of a chef. Mu Luer didn't express her opinion. Xianyuan Xian wanted to say something, but she was too nauseous to speak. She was afraid that if she opened her mouth, she wouldn't be able to stop herself from vomiting. There were two figures sitting at the dining table. One was a handsome young man with a little melancholy expression. He was holding a pair of chopsticks, picking at the food on the plate. The other was a bald man, who looked fierce and fierce. They recognized this bald man. He was the guy who had given them the invitation. At this moment, the handsome young man and the bald man had a plate in front of them. The plate was filled with ingredients, which were pitch-black cubes stacked on top of each other. On top of them was a viscous gravy. The bald man and the handsome young man used their chopsticks to pick up the black cubes that were stained with the viscous gravy and stuff them into their mouth. After stuffing them into their mouths, they started to chew. The chomping sounds resounded in their ears. The faces of Xianyuan Xiaohui and the other three instantly changed. This was because they realized that the stench was coming from those cubes. Those cubes that looked like shit, are they eating shit? Xianyuan Xian's face was filled with fear as he looked at Hades' era and the Black Dragon King. Xianyuan Xiaohui smacked his lips, his gaze a little solemn. As a chef, what he saw was different from Xianyuan Xian. What he saw was the look of enjoyment on Hades' era and the Black Dragon King's faces after eating the black cubes. This dish made them feel happy both physically and mentally. Naturally, Manager Chun felt the same way. As a judge of the Heaven Chief, he naturally knew what the most important thing about a dish was. That was to make the diners feel happy. The corners of Mu Luer's mouth curved into a smile. Indeed, Bufang was Bufang. This mortal chef always did unexpected things. Ding ding ding, the bell on the door frame of the kitchen rang. Bufang walked out of the kitchen. He wiped the water stains on his hands and slowly walked out. His expression was calm. The stench in the air did not affect him in the slightest. When Bufang saw Xianyuan Xiaohui's group of 4 standing at the door, he instantly raised his brows. "You're here. Sit here," Bufang said to the 4 of them. A smile instantly appeared on Xianyuan Xiaohui's face. "Congratulations, Brother Bufang, on the opening of your new restaurant." Then, Xianyuan Xiaohui brought Xianyuan Xian to the dining table, sitting beside Hades' era. Everyone sat down, facing the direction of the kitchen. Smelling the stench at such a close distance, it really made people doubt their lives. Even with Xianyuan Xiaohui's composure, she couldn't help but furrow her brows. It was hard to imagine how the 2 of them swallowed it down. Manager Chen's face was gloomy as he sat down. Glancing at Bufang, he coldly snorted. He was very dissatisfied with Bufang. He felt that Bufang should be training hard for the Heaven Chief's exam, and not come here to create some weird opening ceremony. Mu Luer, on the other hand, smiled and congratulated him. "You guys wait." Bufang looked at the 4 of them sitting down, and the corners of his mouth rose. Then, he turned around and entered the kitchen. The 4 of them looked at each other in dismay. Suddenly, their expressions changed. Could it be that Bufang wanted to bring out that stinky dish for them to eat? Could they refuse? Ding 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 ding. The bell rang again, and Bufang walked out of the kitchen. Indeed, their guess was right. The dish was placed in front of them. It was the jet-black tofu cubes with the jet-black gravy flowing on them, a dish that stinks to the heavens. Bufang looked at the 4 of them. He placed his hand on the dining table and slightly bent his body, saying, "This is the opening ceremony's dish. Please try it. There's no need to be polite." "Who the F***ck is being polite with you? Can I not eat it?" Xianyuan Xian's eyes revealed a look of fear, and he covered his mouth. The others also had awkward expressions on their faces. "That owner Bu, believe me. Don't be fooled by appearances. Maybe what you see and hear isn't the truth. You have to see through the appearance to see the essence," Bufang said. The 4 of them were stunned. His words made sense, and they were actually speechless. Mu Luer's expression was a little strange. She didn't say anything, and she took the lead to pick up her chopsticks, picking up a piece of tofu. The sticky black gravy flowed down the tofu cube. Mu Luer swallowed a mouthful of saliva, then opened her mouth wide and stuffed the tofu cubes into it. Xianyuan Xian's eyes widened, and his face was filled with disbelief. Mu Luer originally thought that what entered her mouth would be a disgusting stench, but unexpectedly, it was smooth and tender. In an instant, it burst out with an exquisite fragrance. It was really fragrant. This fragrance seemed to spread in her mouth, and in an instant, it flowed through her whole body. A feeling that made her spirit become clear surged, as if it had cleansed her soul. As she chewed, the soft tofu was crushed, and the fragrant tofu juice flowed in her mouth, adhering to her tongue. The taste was excellent. Good. Delicious. Mu Luer said in a daze. In the next instant, her eyes suddenly lit up. She looked at Bufang, full of surprise. This mortal chef was really not ordinary. This stinky tofu actually had the effect of cleansing one's soul. At this moment, her spirit sea seemed to become more condensed. It should be known that for divine spirit realm experts, the effect of condensing their spirit sea was too great. Not only would it increase their mental force, but it could also make their cultivation base more solid. Xianyuan Shihui's eyes narrowed. Mu Luer's expression was beyond his expectations. Could it be making a decision in his heart? He also picked up a piece of stinky tofu and stuffed it into his mouth. As he chewed faster and faster, he finally understood the surprise in Mu Luer's eyes. Bufang always brought people unexpected delicacies. This kind of innovation, breaking the norm, amazed him. Although he was the new Heaven Chief, in terms of innovation, he knew that he wasn't as good as Bufang. He didn't know why, but he suddenly believed that Bufang would definitely surprise everyone in the Heaven Chief test. At the entrance of the Heaven Chief restaurant, at this moment, a group of people had gathered in front of the restaurant. They were all waiting for Xianyuan Shihui and the others to come out of the restaurant. All of a sudden, the crowd cried out in alarm. The sound of hooves resounded. In the next instant, a large group of people arrived. Tong Cheng's face was gloomy as he dismounted from his thunder dragon horse. He clasped his hands, coldly glancing at the group of people around him. Then, his eyes fell on the small restaurant. Is that the mortal chef's restaurant? It's really trash. It's narrow and small. Tong Cheng sneered. At this moment, the onlookers sucked in a breath of cold air. It's Tong Cheng, the aristocratic Tong family's Heaven Chief. Another Heaven Chief has appeared. This restaurant doesn't have an ordinary background. I'm really curious who the owner of this restaurant is. The onlookers became restless once again, chattering non-stop. The excitement on their faces became thicker. Tong Cheng didn't pay attention to the crowd. He clasped his hands, coldly turning around to enter the restaurant. He was eager to see how surprised that mortal would be when he saw him. That mortal wouldn't expect him to come back. At that time, he could humiliate that mortal, Creek. His two subordinates helped him push open the restaurant's door. Tong Cheng clasped his hands, stepping into the restaurant. The two subordinates glanced at each other before stepping inside as well. As soon as they entered the restaurant, Tong Cheng furrowed his brows. His nose twitched and then his face suddenly darkened. What's that smell? Why is it so smelly? Tong Cheng was bewildered. As he smelled the stench, his stomach churned. His two subordinates couldn't stand it anymore. They covered their mouth. Suddenly, their eyes focused on the people sitting at the table in the distance. Xianyuan Shihui, Manager Chen, and Mu Luer. They were happily eating stinky food. Were they eating **T? Tong Cheng was bewildered. Xianyuan Shihui picked up a piece of stinky tofu with her chopstick. She happily stuffed it into her mouth and chewed. As if she sensed something, she turned to look at the door and saw Tong Cheng standing there. Tong Cheng was bewildered for a moment, then he grinned. Brother Tong Cheng, you're here. Come and sit. Tong Cheng looked at Xianyuan Shihui, who was grinning at him. Her mouth was stained with black tofu. He sucked in a breath of cold air. The stench instantly flooded his nostrils. He, who was obsessed with cleanliness, collapsed in an instant. Blurg, this smell. I can't stand it anymore. Tong Cheng's face looked as though he had swallowed sh*t. He forgot about humiliating Bufang. He turned around, pushed the door open, and stormed out of the restaurant. His two subordinates also stormed out of the restaurant. Blurg, as Tong Cheng stormed out of the restaurant, he couldn't stand it anymore. He vomited. Damn it. That mortal must have prepared well to disgust me. Tong Cheng was so angry that he felt like he was going crazy. All of a sudden, Tong Cheng had a bad premonition. He turned around and saw his two subordinates storming out of the restaurant. Their eyes widened and their mouths bulged. "Shut up!" Tong Cheng shouted. However, Tong Cheng felt as though the sky was about to collapse. The onlookers outside the restaurant were shocked as they watched the scene unfold in front of the restaurant. My God! What happened? So explosive! Chapter 972. At this moment, the atmosphere became very quiet. Everyone was dumbstruck as they stared blankly at the scene that happened in front of the restaurant. It was a scene that made everyone feel extremely awkward. Tong Cheng, the young master of the Tong family and the genius immortal chef of the immortal city, was now covered in vomit by his subordinate. This situation was too shocking. No one had expected it. What had happened in that restaurant after all? After the onlookers got a hold of themselves, they were very excited. They wanted to know what had happened in the restaurant. Tong Cheng's distressed appearance had made their hearts full of curiosity. Tong Cheng's eyes were dull, and his entire body was shaking. He was a neat freak. As a heaven chief, he was a neat freak. His kitchen knife was always cleaned and his clothes were also very clean. He needed to use the heaven and earth obsidian flame to sterilize his clothes. He was a very clean person. However, he had miscalculated this time. His entire body was shaking. He had come to this restaurant to mock that mortal and disturb his thoughts, so that he wouldn't be able to perform well in the Heaven Chief's assessment in 2 days. At that time, he would lose the protection of the Heaven Chief Hall, and that mortal would be at his mercy. However, was this a King restaurant? Pushing the door open, Tong Cheng thought that he had entered a toilet. The stench it emitted suffocated him. The most important thing was that Xianyuan Xiaohui had said, "Come on, let's eat together. Eat your sister." He was the young master of the Tong family, the genius Heaven Chief. How could he eat sh*t? Get lost. All of you get lost. Tong Cheng's eyes immediately turned red as he furiously cried out. Terrifying true immortal realm aura burst out from his body, blowing away all the filth on his body. His body seemed to turn into a lightning bolt, disappearing from his spot. The onlookers tried to hold back their laughter. Eventually, they couldn't hold back their curiosity. They pushed the door open to see what had happened in the restaurant. However, shortly after, the onlookers were dumbstruck. The restaurant was filled with a stench that could make people go to heaven. At the table, the newly promoted Heaven Chief, Xianyuan Xiaohui, was eating the stinky food with relish. Oh my God! The onlooker's worldview was collapsing. He stuffed the last piece of stinky tofu into his mouth. Xianyuan Xiaohui let out a long sigh of relief. Jingle, 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 jingle of a bell rang out. Bufang walked out of the kitchen. He looked at Xianyuan Xiaohui indifferently, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Are you done? Owner Bu's dishes are really special. They smell so bad, but they taste so delicious. It's as if they have magic. Xianyuan Xiaohui used a clean cloth to wipe her mouth, wiping away the black soup stains on her lip. Xianyuan Xian looked at Bufang with a complicated gaze. Why did he make such a delicious dish so smelly? Didn't Bufang know that it was easy to lose customers this way? Some people couldn't stand the stench. Today is the opening ceremony of my restaurant, and I want to thank everyone for coming. Therefore, the next dish will be free for everyone to taste. I hope everyone can enjoy it, Bufang said. The the stinky tofu was just an appetizer. It was just the first shot to make the restaurant famous. Although it was located in a remote area, the stinky tofu had made a name for itself, and other delicacies were used to attract customers. This way, the restaurant would soon be able to gain a foothold in this immortal city. This time, it won't be another stinky dish, right? Manager Chun stroked his beard, looking at Bufang as he snorted. Although he had to admit that the stinky tofu was delicious, the problem was, the smell was really bad. No, wait a minute. Bufang shook his head, saying. Then, Bufang returned to the kitchen. Hades' era had already eaten and drank to his heart's content. At this moment, he was holding a spicy strip in his mouth, looking at Xianyuan Shehui and the others calmly. Hades' era's handsome face attracted many people's gazes. After all, it was pleasing to the eye. Mu Luer and Xianyuan Xian were also attracted. After the Black Dragon King ate and drank to his heart's content, he smiled and rubbed his bald head. Then, he ran to the side to play with his daughter. At this moment, Xianyuan Shehui and the others were in the mood to look at the situation in the restaurant. They saw Lord Go, who was lying on the ground in the distance, and Hua, who was hugging Lord Go's thigh. Bufang also raised a dog? In the Heaven Chief realm, there were many chefs who raised spirit pets, so they weren't too surprised. Ring, ring, ring. The metal bell hanging on the door frame of the kitchen rang again. This bell was provided by the system, and its sound was crisp and sweet, as though it had a soul-cleansing effect. It was somewhat similar to the effect of the stinky tofu. Bufang took out a copper pot and placed it in front of the four of them. Bufang indifferently glanced at them. Mu Luer's eyes lit up. I know. Is owner Bu planning to make a hot pot? Mu Luer had eaten Bufang's hot pot before, so naturally, she couldn't resist the delicious taste. Eating hot pot with many people was a very happy thing. Hot pot? Xianyuan Shehui and Xianyuan Xian were slightly stunned. Manager Chen's face darkened. So, the hot pot that has caused an uproar outside the immortal city is the product of Owner Bu's research. As expected, Owner Bu's innovation in dishes is something that I can't compare to. Xianyuan Shehui sighed. Xianyuan Xian looked at Bufang, and his eyes shone even brighter. It was entirely possible for Bufang to become the Heaven Chief. According to Xianyuan Xian's plan, if he wanted to woo the Heaven Chief, he had to do it before he became the Heaven Chief. Don't forget your friends when you become rich and powerful. Thus, Xianyuan Xian's heart was very restless. The way he looked at Bufang made Bufang's hair stand on end. Opening his mouth, Bufang spat out a dark golden flame. When Xianyuan Shehui saw this, the corners of his mouth suddenly curled into a smile. Owner Bu, take back your heaven and earth obsidian flame. What? Bufang was bewildered. If you use my immortal flame, perhaps the taste of the hot pot can be improved, said Xianyuan Shehui. Immortal flame. Bufang was silent for a while. Then, he waved his hand, making the heaven and earth obsidian flame in the hot pot disappear. You do it, Bufang said. The corners of Xianyuan Shehui's mouth curled up. Then, with a shake of his hand, true energy circulated. As Xianyuan Shehui could pass the Heaven Chief's test, his cultivation base was not weak. In fact, no one who could become the Heaven Chief was weak. To condense the immortal energy in the dish, one needed a very strong mental force, as well as physical strength. Any deficiency would make the previous effort to condense the immortal energy go to waste. Boom! A glass-like light emerged from Xianyuan Shehui's palm. It was a flame that looked like a chrysanthemum. It was dark green, as resplendent as glass. As soon as the flame appeared, the temperature in the restaurant soared. Terrifying heat waves constantly rushed out. Bufang's eyes shrank, staring at the flame in Xianyuan Shehui's hand. This is an immortal flame? Bufang exhaled, calming the shock in his heart as he asked. That's right. The immortal flame is a flame that every chef yearns for. Even an immortal chef yearns for it. Xianyuan Shehui said seriously. Coincidentally, Xianyuan Shehui had obtained the glaze immortal flame by chance, which helped his cooking skills soar and eventually become the Heaven Chief. He was very grateful and loved this immortal flame. "It's really good," Bufang said seriously. As soon as the immortal flame appeared, the dark gold flame in his body, which was the fusion of two heaven and earth obsidian flames, shivered. Boom! With a flick of his finger, the glass-like flame entered the copper wok, burning fiercely. Inside the wok, the red chili soup began to boil. The air was filled with a thick aroma and spicy smell. The roasting of the immortal flame could perfectly release the flavor of the ingredients. Bufang felt that he should find an immortal flame. The heaven and earth obsidian flames couldn't keep up with his current level. Taking a deep look at the glass-like flame, Bufang turned around and stepped into the kitchen. Shortly after, he brought out all the ingredients he had prepared. Different from the stinky tofu, this spicy hot pot was fragrant and spicy, which made the four of them eat to their heart's content. In the heaven and earth farmland, Bufang's mind flickered, and he appeared on the vast plain. The wind blew, and the plump ears of wheat rustled as they bumped into each other. The dark green grass swayed in the wind, and layers of green waves surged past. The air was filled with a thick fruity aroma, which was the fragrance of ripe spirit fruits. Bufang clasped his hands, walking in the heaven and earth farmland. This time, he came to the heaven and earth farmland to prepare ingredients for the Heaven Chief test. Originally, Bufang wanted to cook the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup for the Heaven Chief test. However, yesterday, Xianyuan Shehui had told him that the Buddha jumps over the wall soup required a lot of ingredients, and it was hard to condense a wisp of immortal energy. The so-called immortal energy was actually the origin energy of the ingredient. Each ingredient had its own origin, and as long as the origin energy was extracted and condensed, it would become immortal energy. The immortal energy condensed by the origin energy could vividly reflect the deliciousness of the dish. The more origin energy one could extract, the more immortal energy one could condense. However, this was very difficult. Since the origin energy in the ingredients was already small, the more condensed it was, the higher the mental force required of the chef. This was also the reason why no one in the Heaven Chief was weak. Without enough cultivation base, they couldn't extract the origin energy of the ingredient. The higher the grade of the ingredients, the more origin energy it contained. This was also why the ingredients grown on the Heaven Tree were often the targets of the Heaven Chief's competition. There were too many ingredients for the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, and it was too difficult to condense immortal energy. Thus, Bufang wanted to change to another dish. Yesterday, he had completed the system's temporary task and received the reward, the glazed soup dumplings. This time, the system rewarded him with a high-grade dish. After checking the cooking method, Bufang understood the level of the glazed soup dumplings. It was definitely a dish that the Heaven Chief could cook. According to the system's description, the requirement to make the glazed soup dumplings was to condense a wisp of immortal energy. Glazed soup dumplings. Using flour made from guanyin tears rice, 5 kinds of spirit beast meat, and fresh cabbage as the fillings. Through strict kneading techniques and the pleated stuffing method, the glazed soup dumplings are made. This was the system's introduction to Bufang. This was the new dish provided by the system, and it made Bufang very excited. Guanyin tears rice was the ingredient Bufang grew in the heaven and earth farmland. 5 kinds of spirit beast meat, blood lobster meat, demon frog meat, papillion meat, octopus tentacles, and 80 drumstick meat. It was almost perfect. Although it wasn't the best combination of spirit beast meat, Bufang believed that the glazed soup dumplings he made would definitely help him become the Heaven Chief. The most important thing was the cooking method. The cooking method of the glazed soup dumplings was very difficult. When Yo Han-san sensed Bufang's arrival, he immediately smiled and tried to get close to Bufang. According to Bufang's request, Niu Hansan prepared all the ingredients Bufang needed and gave them to Bufang. After chatting for a while, Bufang left the heaven and earth farmland. Bufang promised Niu Hansan that he would find more spirit vegetables, spirit herbs, and spirit beasts to put in the heaven and earth farmland. Niu Hansan had long regarded the heaven and earth farmland as his home. In this place, he could relax, which made him very satisfied. And when he was free, he would help Bufang develop the heaven and earth farmland. As Bufang's cultivation base increased, the heaven and earth farmland also expanded. In fact, every time Bufang walked out of the restaurant and saw the incomparably huge trunk of the heaven tree in the inner circle of the immortal city, he always had the urge to move the heaven chief into the heaven and earth farmland. If the heaven tree was moved into the heaven and earth farmland, it would change the heaven and earth farmland completely. Unfortunately, Bufang could only think about it. With his cultivation base, he couldn't even move the trunk of the heaven tree. The night passed. The next day, the sky was clear. The sun shone and the sky was clear for thousands of miles. The air was filled with a rich fragrance. Bufang pushed open the door of the Heaven Chief restaurant, walking out. He twisted his neck, looking in the direction of the Heaven Chief hall. His vermilion robe fluttered, and his untied hair fluttered in the wind. 3 days had passed. Today was the day of the Heaven Chief's test. Bufang's heart was filled with anticipation. At the entrance of the Heaven Chief hall, people were surging. Everyone knew that today was the day of the test that the mortal chef and Tong Ching had agreed on with the Heaven Chief. If that mortal could become the Heaven Chief, he would be safe and sound. If that mortal couldn't become the Heaven Chief, the Tong family's Tong Ching would never let him go. Actually, this was a mortal's test, and it concerned his life. That mortal had no way out. In the distance, a sandstorm rolled. A thin figure, clasping his hands, slowly walked over. Chapter 973. Brother, are you going out? Xianyuan Xian couldn't help but ask Xianyuan Shehui, who had taken off her chef robe and walked out of the restaurant in casual clothes. Xianyuan Shehui folded her sleeves meticulously, smiling at Xianyuan Xian. Today is the day Owner Bu will take the Heaven Chief exam. Of course, I have to go and see. Do you want to go with me? Asked Xianyuan Shehui. The Heaven Chief exam? Brother, do you think Bufang has a chance to become the Heaven Chief? Xianyuan Xian was silent for a while, then he lifted his head and asked. Xianyuan Xian's question made Xianyuan Shehui silent for a while. It's difficult. First of all, Owner Bu's cultivation base hasn't reached the true immortal realm, which is a shackle. Moreover, Owner Bu doesn't have an immortal flame, which is another shackle. If he has one of the two, the chance of Owner Bu becoming the Heaven Chief will be much higher. However, if he doesn't have either, the possibility of Owner Bu becoming the Heaven Chief is only 1%. Xianyuan Shehui still wore a smile on his face as he spoke. It wasn't easy to become the Heaven Chief. It required a lot of accumulation, enough strength, and all kinds of opportunities. The position of the Heaven Chief in the Heaven Chief realm was so noble, so of course there were reasons for it. However, Bufang had to become the Heaven Chief. If he couldn't become the Heaven Chief, Bufang wouldn't have any chance to avoid the Tong family's troubles. Tong Ching was the veteran Heaven Chief, so he was very powerful. In front of Tong Ching, even Shi Yan couldn't threaten him. He couldn't save Bufang. If he couldn't become the Heaven Chief, the Heaven Chief Hall wouldn't be able to save Bufang. All right, brother, I will go with you. Xianyuan Xian was silent for a while, but in the end, he still decided to go. The siblings closed the restaurant and walked toward the Heaven Chief Hall. At this moment, outside Heaven Chief Hall, everyone widened their eyes as they looked at the figure that was slowly approaching from afar. It was a skinny figure, and his vermilion robe fluttered in the wind. Bufang's face was expressionless as he clasped his hands behind his back and appeared under the gaze of the crowd. This mortal really came. How arrogant! Do you really think it's that easy to pass the exam with the Heaven Chief? Every Heaven Chief has gone through endless training and has accumulated a lot of experience and opportunities. How can mere mortals have the qualifications? The crowd discussed animatedly. They all expressed their disdain for Bufang and did not think highly of Bufang. Many people from the aristocratic families also came. Their gazes were a little playful. Regarding this mortal who dared to go against the Tong family, these aristocratic families somewhat admired Bufang's courage. The Tong family's status in the aristocratic family circle in Immortal City was still very high. There were many aristocratic families in Immortal City. Some were in their heyday, some were desolate, and some were mediocre. And the Tong family was one of those glorious aristocratic families. The Tong family, the Gongshu family, the Zhang family, and the Luo family were known as the top 4 families in Immortal City, second only to the City Lord's mansion. And the City Lord's mansion, the Mu family, was also considered a big aristocratic family. In Immortal City, the aristocratic families ruled. A mere mortal dared to go against the aristocratic families. This was a provocation to the aristocratic families. Mu Luer had already appeared at the entrance of the Heaven Chief Hall. The experts of the Heaven Chief Hall had already surrounded the entrance, waiting for Bufang to appear. Regarding this mortal who had caused such a commotion in the Heaven Chief exam, everyone was a little curious. Bufang's face was very calm as he walked through the crowd. Everyone's eyes were different, each with a complicated expression. However, to Bufang, these complicated expressions couldn't shake his mind at all. "You're here." Mu Luer smiled at Bufang. Her eyes were a little strange as she looked at Bufang with some expectations. Bufang nodded, his face expressionless. In fact, he felt that it was a little troublesome. They should have taken the exam together. Now, he had to come again. "Come with me." Mu Luer was already used to Bufang's poker face. She nodded and led Bufang inside. The surrounding people couldn't help but clamor, following them. A group of people entered the room. Manager Chen had long been waiting for Bufang at the entrance of the Heaven Chief exam room. Previously, Manager Chen had been waiting for Xianyuan Shehui, and now, he was waiting for Bufang. "Are you ready? To tell you the truth, this time's Heaven Chief exam is related to your life. If you succeed, you can continue to live. But if you fail, you will suffer the wrath of the Tong family." Manager Chen stroked his beard as he looked at Bufang and said seriously. Regarding this mortal chef, Manager Chen felt that he couldn't see through him anymore. Especially after Manager Chen had tasted Bufang's dishes in his restaurant, his heart was filled with anticipation and suspicion. Perhaps this mortal could really perform a miracle. I'm ready. Let's finish this quickly." "I'm in a hurry," Bufang said after thinking for a while. Manager Chen was stunned by his words. He glared at Bufang, then led Bufang into the room. With a creak, he pushed open the door of the room. The voice, which was filled with vicissitudes and ancientness, resounded. This assessment room was clearly quite old. The room for the Heaven Chief exam was a little bigger than the room for the special grade chef exam. Bufang strolled slowly and soon, he arrived at the stove in the center of the room. That stove looked simple and unadorned, as though it was made of a special material. Bufang stood in front of the stove, feeling a sense of tranquility. Bufang was slightly bewildered. This stove seemed to be very powerful. "System, have you seen other people's stoves? It can help a chef calm down." "How good is that?" Bufang said to the system in his heart. However, the system was silent for a long time. In the end, it didn't say anything. Apparently, it was too lazy to reply to Bufang. Bufang also thought that the system wouldn't reply. With its stingy nature, how could it give him a better stove? With his hands clasped behind his back, he stood in front of the stove and began to calm down. He began to summarize the steps for the next dish in his mind. Swish. In the audience stand, the audience swarmed in like flowing water. In just a short while, every seat was occupied. There were even no seats left. Some people even crouched in front of the audience stand, squeezing so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through. An aristocratic family member crossed his legs, sitting in the audience stand with a smile on his face, watching Bufang on the stage. If Bufang could become the Heaven Chief, this mortal's value would be extraordinary. Thus, many aristocratic families were very concerned about this exam. Xianyuan Shihui and Xianyuan Xian also arrived. Because of Xianyuan Shihui's identity, they had a seat in the audience stand. Soon, everyone's eyes focused on Bufang, who was standing in the middle of the battlefield. They were looking forward to what dish Bufang would use to become the Heaven Chief. Under their gazes, Bufang had already begun to take out the ingredients one by one. Flour, all kinds of meat, and a fresh cabbage. That's all? In the audience stand, everyone wore a bewildered face. Just these ingredients? Was there nothing else? What was Bufang planning to do? Steamed buns. As if they had guessed what dish Bufang was going to cook, the audience began to chatter. As the audience in the Heaven Chief realm, although some of them weren't chefs, they still knew how to cook. This thing called steamed buns. Can he become the Heaven Chief? I don't think he's going to cook steamed buns. If he's going to make steamed buns, I'll eat *T. How can steamed buns become the Heaven Chief? This kind of low-end dish. How can he become the Heaven Chief? This mortal must be crazy. Bufang had not even started cooking, and the onlookers had already labeled him a failure. They thought that Bufang was doomed to fail. Xianyuan Shihui also furrowed her brows. Flour, meat, vegetables. These ingredients were taken out. It seemed Owner Bu really wanted to make steamed buns. However, steamed buns weren't difficult at all. How could they become the Heaven Chief? Perhaps Owner Bu still has more unique ingredients in his gourd. Xianyuan Shihui couldn't help but say as he thought of Bufang's creative cooking. Creak. The room's door opened one more time. Tong Qing wore a long white robe, a purple gold crown, and a pair of reckless dragon boot. His face was cold as he stepped into the room. He clasped one hand behind his back and played with a round jade bead in his other hand. The jade bead spun in his hand, looking extremely smooth. The young master of the Tong family had arrived. The person who would decide that mortal's fate had arrived. The crowd clamored. When Xianyuan Shihui saw Tong Qing, she grinned at him. Facing that smile, Tong Qing's face twitched. Immediately, bad memories flooded his mind. In the room, Bufang had started to cook. Bufang didn't knead the dough first. Instead, he started to prepare the stuffing. He took out the papillion dragon claw he had prepared, washed it, and placed it into the black turtle constellation wok. He then added a few slices of mother ginger, half a jar of Iceheart jade urn wine, and Heavenly Mountain Spirit spring water. Bufang opened his mouth, spitting out a dark gold flame. The flame entered the black turtle constellation wok, burning fiercely. At this moment, many people's attention fell on Bufang. No one dared to breathe loudly. What's he doing? Shouldn't he knead the dough and let it ferment first? Many people couldn't help but discuss. However, their discussion didn't affect Bufang. He was still meticulously cooking. Taking out 3 blood lobsters, a gold light flashed, and the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in Bufang's hand. He spun the knife, twirling it. Shortly after, he cut the blood lobsters and peeled off their blood-red shells. Then, he gouged out the crystal-clear blood lobster meat. The 3 pieces of lobster meat were prepared. Placing them on the chopping board, the dragon bone kitchen knife spun. Clatter, clatter. It was as though meteors were falling from the sky. The lobster meat was chopped into meat paste. Bufang had 3 kinds of knife skills. One was the basic meteor knife skill, the other was the Overlord 13 blades, and the last one was the cutting immortal style. However, Bufang hadn't practiced the cutting immortal style, so he didn't use it. Moreover, The Overlord 13 blades wasn't suitable for chopping such delicate ingredients. Bufang's knife skill had shocked many people. However, it was just a shock. The demon frog meat was diced, the papillion meat was diced, and the octopus tentacles were diced. Bufang poured these ingredients into a blue and white porcelain bowl. His mind flickered. He took 80 out of the heaven and earth farmland. When 80 appeared, it was still a little dumbfounded. This little fellow had been eating too well in the heaven and earth farmland. It was so fat that it looked like a ball. Its little head turned, and in the end, it landed on Bufang's body. As well as the sparkling dragon bone kitchen knife in Bufang's hand. Cluck, cluck, cluck. 80 called out. Bufang held the kitchen knife, and the corners of his mouth rose with difficulty. He wanted to show a gentle smile. However, when 80 looked at him, its hair stood on end. Cluck, cluck, cluck. 80, who had seen through Bufang's intentions, was enraged. Its plump body shook, and it actually broke free from Bufang's hand. It jumped onto the floor of the room and started to run. Outside the stage, everyone looked at the 8 treasures chicken that jumped from Bufang's hand and ran away. They were all stunned. However, some people's eyes suddenly lit up. In the audience stand, Xianyuan Shehui's eyes suddenly lit up. Immortal ingredient? The eyes of many chefs from the aristocratic families also narrowed. An ingredient from the heaven tree? No. It doesn't seem like it. However, its spirit energy is so strong. A top-grade ingredient. It's not an exaggeration to call it an immortal ingredient. Tong Cheng played with the jade bead in his hand, and his eyes flashed with light. Immortal ingredient 8 treasures chicken? No wonder you're so confident. Unfortunately, immortal ingredients aren't enough to become Heaven Chief. Heaven Chief isn't that simple. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.